Well, good morning everybody, and welcome here to this ordinary meeting at the Caloundra Chambers. I want to extend a welcome to my councillor colleagues, all of our staff, members of the public in the gallery, and those joining us via live stream. Welcome to you all. I'd ask the chamber to be upstanding, and I call on Councillor Hungerford to acknowledge the traditional custodians. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it gives me great pleasure to do this. On behalf of Council, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the Sunshine Coast local government area. The Kabi peoples of the coastal plains and the northern hinterland, and on whose traditional lands we gather today, and the Jindabawa peoples of the southern hinterland. We wish to pay respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important role First Nations people continue to play within the Sunshine Coast community. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hungerford. Please remain upstanding as I call on Pastor Alex Tan from the History Maker Church at Boccaruna to read the prayer. Thanks, Alex.
Hello everyone, thank you for having me here. My name's Alex, I'm from HM Church in Kawana. We meet in the school hall there, and it's a great privilege to be here. We own one of the last blocks on Sportsman's Parade there, and it's our hope with your support to one day have a great building to support and serve our community. So let's pray together. God, we thank you for today. As you teach us to rejoice always and give thanks in all circumstances, we thank you for today. We thank you for the gift of life, the breath in our lungs. God, we thank you for this beautiful country we get to call home, the great Southland of the Holy Spirit. God, we thank you for the state of Queensland and the beautiful Sunshine Coast. Thank you for sending Jesus to show us what true love looks like. We are so blessed. As the Bible teaches us to honour those in leadership, I do that now. God, I thank you for our leaders. I thank you for the leaders in our community, for the weight that they carry, the difficult roles that they have. I pray your peace and protection upon them and their families. Lord, strengthen them. Give them a heart to always do good. Give them eyes to help the vulnerable. Give them wisdom to allocate resources. Give them boldness to stand up for righteousness. Let their eyes be open to all that you are doing through the good people in your churches through the Sunshine Coast, and guide them in their decisions today. God, as I close, I pray your blessing upon the Sunshine Coast and all of our neighbouring regions. I pray over our young people, over our old people. I thank you for the great plans and purposes that you have for this region and our people, plans to give us a hope and a future. I pray for your light and your love to shine in and through the Sunshine Coast. God, I pray that your kingdom come and your will be done here on the Sunshine Coast as it is in heaven. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Alex. Please be seated. We have a full contingent of councillors today, with Councillor Dixon joining us via Teams. Morning, Councillor. Our CEO, Emma Thomas, is on leave and is an apology. However, Deborah Robinson is our acting CEO. Welcome to you, Deborah. Councillor Johnston, you would like to speak to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Madam Acting CEO. It's good to see you smiling. Mr Mayor and fellow councillors, I, with my family, will be away from the Sunshine Coast travelling for the December meeting, and as did Councillor Jason O'Prey a few months ago, he asked for leave of absence just in case I don't get back in time for the January meeting, which I think is almost certain unless something really serious happens. I'd like to move that the council approve a leave of absence for Councillor Winston Johnston for the ordinary meeting of Thursday the 8th of December 2022 and Thursday 25th of January 23 should my return to Australia be delayed for some reason.
I think that might be Wednesday the 25th.
Is that?
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Australia Day falls on the 26th. Anyway, that's...
Anyway, Wednesday the 25th.
Good.
It's not what it says on my piece of paper, but you're right.
Someone...
Thursday the 26th, Australia Day.
Someone happy to second. Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The receipt and confirmation of the minutes of our last ordinary meeting on the 27th of October. Someone prepared to move? Councillor Natoli, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Hungerford. All those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously. Thank you again. There is no mayoral minute. Item 6, councillors, I remind you of the requirements under Chapter 5B of the Local Government Regulation 2012, which sets out how councillors' conflicts of interest are managed in local government matters, and these requirements apply to how we will deal with such matters at this meeting. So if you have something that needs to be raised, please do so before that item is dealt with. There is no procedural motion. Item 7 is presentations, and I go to Councillor Law first for the Mobility Mapping Award. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Mr Mayor. Through you. Mr Mayor, councillors, it's a great pleasure to share with you an award that was made to the council at the 2022 National Awards for Local Government. The Mobility Maps projects won the Productivity Through Infrastructure Award, and that award is about improving productivity, increasing the economic, social and sustainable well-being of communities, something that I know the council is very focused on doing in all of our daily activities, and is delightful to receive this award, this national award, on behalf of the work that's been done. The Mobility Maps projects came about as a trial to test new techniques to assist community members with limited mobility or people with a short-term injury to move around the Sunshine Coast by providing access to maps and wayfinding information for accessible routes. Council partnered with Biometrics, who are a leading provider of technology solutions for people with disabilities, to undertake a pilot project focused on inclusivity and mobility. And that will change the way the community travels across the popular areas of the Sunshine Coast using this modern mapping technology that's available for anyone to download to their handheld device. And it also allows people to look at those maps and plan their time on the Sunshine Coast before coming here. So we recruited some people who use wheelchairs. Devices were attached to them, and they went out and they mapped the tracks from Maroochydore to Mooloolaba to test them and indicate what's accessible and what are the best routes for people to travel. Those maps are now available online. They identified the footpaths, the shared paths, and the trails accessible for people of all abilities. Mums and dads with toddlers, they can take advantage of this. Elderly people with walkers or with sticks, and of course people who use a wheelchair to get about in every day of their life. We will continue to work with Biometrics to extend this program to other popular areas on the Sunshine Coast, and I understand that the Sunshine Coast University Hospital Health Precinct has also now got the full mapping available for that area as well, and thank you to the state government for helping with that. But it's really important that our whole region continues to become accessible for public amenities and all of the footpaths so that we can all enjoy the community at the same level. So it's another excellent recognition of the work the council does across many teams, and I'm delighted to present the award to the, I believe, the design and placemaking team this morning.
Thank you, Councillor Law, and I think we've got Ben McGovern, Ben Stevens, Evelyn Murphy, Jane Goodwin and Tamara Risley. Correct? Please come forward. Thank you very much. Well done. So I've that moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Cox. All those in favour of receipt? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Let's move to Councillor Johnston, the Stormwater Queensland Award for Excellence in Policy and Education.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, it's my proud duty to present to you the first award for Council's Construction Management and Waterway Protection Task Force. The Stormwater Queensland Excellence in Policy and Education Award recognises excellence in policy, regulation, educational programs and activities that facilitate and accelerate the undertake of stormwater management principles and practices, leading to the sustainable use and management of stormwater. The task force is led by Patricia Jensen, Richard McGilvray and Rob Sewell, includes Rupert Hindley, Michelle Walker, Lisa Miliak and Sally Welsh. I'm sorry if I got Lisa's surname wrong. They also receive valuable input from the number of staff in the Development Services branch and across the organisation. The program is designed to improve construction management practices and levels of compliance regarding erosion and sediment control, improve our waterways, wetlands and ocean health through a comprehensive engagement, education and regulatory approach. This first year the team has focused on obtaining a baseline of erosion and sediment control data. They have also conducted substantial engagement and communication with internal and external stakeholders across the region. With all this rain that we've had in the last couple of years, they've had their work cut out for them. Despite the forecast for weather in the coming time, the program is already seeing increased compliance and positive cultural change across the building and development industries. The program is funded through the Sunshine Coast Council Environment Levy. Winners of State Excellence Awards are accepted as automatic entries to the National Awards. Congratulations to Tricia, to Richard, Rob and team, and well done for all of your hard work, Lisa, Michelle, Rupert, Sally. And I'm extremely proud to present this on behalf of Councillor Dixon and myself as Service Excellence Portfolio Councillor. Now, you come down here.
Thank you. No, I'll let you do it.
In the middle. And so congratulations. Well done. Well hard work on that. Thank you. Wide angle lens there.
Well done, team. So moved by Councillor Johnston. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Natoli. All those in favour of receipt? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And finally, Councillor Landsborough with this special recognition award for the most outstanding international engagement program for 2022. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, through the Chair. And yes, it's my pleasure to receive this award on behalf of Economic Development. And obviously this was an award that was presented by the Australian-Malaysia Business Council of Queensland at the Nordic Forum and the International Circle Day on the 4th of November at the annual Christmas Ball at Parliament House. And I'd like to just read, it's very important to read exactly word for word the Australian-Malaysia Business Council's stated document on this, receiving this award. In the 16 years of Business Council and in our wider involvement in international relations over more than 20 years, the Sunshine Coast International Forum was by far the best international engagement event we have ever encountered. We do not say this lightly, as we have been involved in numerous large-scale international relations events put on by federal, state and many local governments, including larger ones such as Brisbane, both in Australia and in other countries. The Sunshine Coast International Forum was truly outstanding and left all other events in its wake. What was so notable was that it was not only a very technically excellent program, but it was a very genuine and heartfelt engagement that successfully cut through many of the usual barriers that we encounter and got to the heart of the matter. The skills and the professionalism of the team was also outstanding. It clearly positioned Sunshine Coast as not only a tourism destination, but also as a highly attractive trade, business and investment destination. It articulated clearly the world-class infrastructure and support services available and the tremendous opportunities presented across multiple sectors such as sports, food and beverage, aviation and technology, ICT, health and education. Other programs have had the supports of the likes of Prime Ministers, Premiers and Ministers, and yet your program was far superior. What an achievement it was. So congratulations. And I'd like to obviously share this portfolio with Jason O'Prey as well. So on behalf of Jason and Council, we'd like to present this award. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I want to welcome Andy Eves-Brown, Gabriel Troon and Nikki Duckworth, who are here with us this morning as well. Congratulations. Well done, thank you. So moved by Councillor Landsborough, seconded by Councillor O'Prey. All those approving, thank you. That's carried unanimously. Move on to item 8.1, which is the Sunshine Coast Council Annual Report for 21-22, and I welcome Luke Flanagan to give us a presentation. Thank you, Luke.
Good morning, Mr Mayor and Councillors. The purpose of this report today is to seek Council's endorsement of the Sunshine Coast Annual Report for 21-22. The Annual Report is a statutory requirement of the Local Government Act and provides all the information that is required by the Act and the Local Government Regulation 2012. The presentation of the Annual Report covers the period 1 July 2021 to 30 June 2022 and provides an important opportunity to monitor the progress towards the implementation of our corporate and operational plans over the financial year. There's 4 sections within the annual report. The first section has messages from the Mayor and the CEO, key statistics about the region, our corporate structure, councillor divisions and portfolios. Section 2 highlights the achievements in delivering the operational and corporate plans and in doing so progressing the corporate plan. This section aligns to the 5 goals of the corporate plan, which makes sure that we have alignment between our long, medium and short-term planning as well as our progress reporting. There's also a range of performance measures that come out of the corporate plan with progress updates on each of these. Then we move to section 3, which has the annual disclosures and presentation of important information in relation to Council's governance and risk management. And finally, section 4 presents the financial information, including Council's community financial report and audited financial statements. It's important to note that this financial information will be part of a separate report to Council today as part of today's ordinary meeting, and then will be included with the full annual report following adoption. Throughout this annual report, you'll find examples of Council's ongoing commitments to balancing our community, environment and economic strategic goals as we seek to achieve our vision as Australia's most sustainable region, healthy, smart, creative, partnering with our community, business and other tiers of government to effectively position the region for the future, responding to a changing climate by taking action, committing to zero net emissions and embedding sustainability in everything we do. Delivering service excellence across our many programs, projects and functions that enable our community to thrive, and remaining agile and responsive to the changing needs of our community as we work together to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as some of the severe weather events over the year. In terms of the headline results within the report, over the financial year, 83% of the operational plan activities were delivered and 85% of the capital works program was delivered. As mentioned, this year's annual report also includes 28 performance measures. 15 of these achieved their targets over the year. For the other 13 that did not meet target, there is explanatory comments within the annual report. There's some key themes that emerge across the ones that did not meet target, and they come down to, I guess, some of the broader impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic as we respond to this, as well as some of the challenges that the severe weather events had. This is particularly in terms of access to materials and labour and the increased cost of many goods and services through this period. In particular, this has contributed to our capital works delivery program falling just short of our 90% target, as well as some of our impacts on our international and domestic exports during this period. The other key theme is around population growth, and in particular over the financial year in question, the average population growth was higher than some of our historic averages. This has impacts on a lot of the results that relate to per resident measures. An example of this is the per resident reduction in council's greenhouse gas emissions. Although many of the emission categories reduced over the year, due to population growth, the waste tonnage that was going into our waste facilities increased, and so did the emissions from them. Our 2041 target of having 5 hectares of land per resident for sports and recreational purposes is also tracking slightly behind target. The annual report presented to you today provides an important communication channel to keep community and stakeholders informed of our progress towards progressing our vision. And alongside with the challenges presented, there has also been some exceptional milestones. Pending Council's adoption, the annual report 21-22 will be published and made available for free download on Council's website. And with this in mind, Mr Mayor and Councillors, the annual 21-22 highlights what has been achieved for the Sunshine Coast over the financial year. It meets all our statutory requirements, and therefore it is recommended that Council adopts the Sunshine Coast Annual Report 21-22.
Thank you very much, Luke. Someone to move? Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Natoli. Sorry, Councillor Davresco. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
Through you, Mr Mayor. The annual report is a statutory requirement of the Local Government Act 2009. This provides all the information required by the Act and the Local Government Regulation 2012. To cover the highlights of the year, overall Council was able to deliver 83% of the operational plan 21-22. Despite the need to adjust operations to keep our community safe through several weather events. We also delivered 85% of the $268 million capital works program. Despite significant supply chain challenges impacting access to materials, services and labour, and in some cases contributed to increased project costs, still delivered 85%. So under the main pillars of our community plan, our strong community, a renewed online community engagement platform called Have Your Say was launched in July 2021, making it as easy as possible for residents to be involved in council projects. 10,000 people have registered. Under our environment and livability, the South East Queensland City Deal was signed on the 21st of March 2022. This committed $35.3 million towards the Blue Heart Sunshine Coast. The project will assist the Maroochydore River catchment to continue to play its important flood storage role and maintain biodiversity well into the future. Under our resilient economy, 71% or $300 million of Council's total available purchasing spend for the year was awarded to local businesses. Under our service excellence, 45,000 organic bins were distributed in May 2022, contributing to Council's commitment to reduce waste to landfill and get our emissions down. And under our outstanding organisation, $314.4 million was received from Palisade Investment Partners on the 30th of June 2022. This was the final payment and extinguished all debt Council had incurred for the Sunshine Coast Airport Expansion Project. I'm just taking one from each pillar. There's more in here and I'll leave it for others who want to speak as well. But this shows the strong commitment we have to our community, investing in our community and delivering for our community. And with all those headwinds we had through the year with weather and supply chains and costs of projects, we still delivered. I think this is an outstanding achievement. We should be very proud of it. Not only us, but all the council staff and the departments involved. It isn't without everyone through the organisation working together you achieve these things, and I think this is an excellent report, and I commend it to you and the community also. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, councillors, I wish to obviously give my support to this report today on the recognition of what has been achieved during the period of 21-22 operational plan. And firstly, I want to say thank you to every single employee who works for council and every single volunteer who works for council or through council for their community for the huge commitment for every single thing that makes the Sunshine Coast a wonderful place for us to all call home. So, through you, Mayor and Acting CEO, please pass on our congratulations and thanks to everyone involved to give us what is one of the best reports that I have seen on capturing what's happened in the last year. This is the third one I've been involved to read and to have a contribution to, but I think it's one of the best that we've had. And for me, the one I would like to pick out from this that is recognised in the front of the report by our Mayor and by the CEO is a year ago we discussed in this room whether we should recognise the state of climate emergency, and we unanimously decided to do that. And it's delightful to see what has happened in a year since then to actually make significant difference on behalf of our community to address the challenges that the climate emergency presents us on a daily basis. We've had incredible changes to our governance structure that impacts every single employee and every single task and action that we do. And I guess the highlight from the work that we've done since November is the creation of the Zero Net Emissions strategy, and now the work we're doing to implement and to make good on that strategy and all the targets that we've had in place since. So I think for all of us, certainly for me, for the whole community and for our future communities, this is an excellent report capturing some tremendous work over the last year. Thank you very much, and I will certainly be supporting this today.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I too want to congratulate the organisation and the staff that have worked so tirelessly for the community. Thank you, Luke, for your contribution, incredible guidance in terms of being able to put this together. And I know we've had discussions in regards to how better we can present the annual report in maybe audio-visual opportunities in the future. So that's great that we're going to look at that. I just wanted to highlight one point. We're all aware of the cybersecurity threats that organisations, big organisations like Optus and Medicare Private have encountered in terms of the risks to their organisation, their reputation, and the protection of data is so important. I just wanted to highlight the fact that in that environment that we're seeing more and more of these threats to organisations, that in the last 12 months we've had 0 notifiable data breaches, which is amazing. I know that we've been working very hard. I know that the amount of training that each of us have had to go through to try and keep on top and be aware. I know of the many different types of emails that we do get that we can pick up before we even open them. So that training, that commitment has been outstanding. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. Councillor Natoli. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but thank you for the work that you and the team have done. It's an excellent snapshot of the work that this council has done in striving towards our strategic goals. I'm only just going to speak to the environment and livability section of the report. And when I look at it, there's a number of great initiatives there, but we can really condense it down to 2 core themes, and that is environment and growth. We know with certainty that the community of the Sunshine Coast highly value our environmental areas. and they have a high desire to protect these areas as well. But we also cannot ignore that people have flocked to this region recently and that migration will continue to occur. That's why the work being undertaken in the new planning scheme has been essential, and I'd like to acknowledge the strategic planning team for the work that they undertook in the preliminary consultation, which was not a legislative requirement but was really valuable in gaining insights from the community, from our businesses and from our development industry about what's important to include in the new planning scheme. What is concerning, though, is the knee-jerk thinking and commentary that comes with an abnormal property market and an existing housing crisis, and the desire to use the planning scheme as a vehicle to lobby various levels of government to make rash decisions. Commentary that I've heard such as, if you just open up more land, that will solve the housing crisis. That is not true. Releasing land for development only allows a select few to land bank for the long term. New areas would not be able to offer land for sale for quite a number of years. I'm not seeing any half-price campaigns from builders or developers, and I'm not seeing the state government buy up existing houses to solve the housing crisis, which is we need action now, not in 5 years' time. That would be an immediate response. However, it's probably not very well thought through, just like releasing land willy-nilly should be carefully thought through. Another comment that I heard was that livability should be considered last. Well, that might work if you don't intend to live in those areas, but if you do, it's very, very important. I digress. Back to more land is the solution to the housing crisis. It's a lengthy and complex process to release new land for development, and rightly so. Robust and rigorous assessment needs to be undertaken to consider any such thing, and driving past a cleared parcel of land and looking out through your car window and thinking, oh, that looks all right, it's ready for development, is not rigorous assessment. Our community should know, and other levels of government should take note, that there is existing land supply. Palmview and Caloundra South are on the market right now. That there is appropriately future planned land supply. Beerwah East will provide land supply beyond 2041. And this area is already being assessed by the state government, so it's already underway in the process. We are not starting from scratch. The planning scheme seeks to manage growth on the coast in a responsible and sustainable way, which neatly aligns with the principles of the UNESCO Biosphere, which we just received recognition of this year. We have examples of where clear land can be restored to retain flood storage, to increase biodiversity values. It provides places for recreation and education, and it also provides potential carbon sequestration opportunities. Land currently cleared or lacking in tree cover is still important environmental land. The Blue Heart is a perfect example of this, and its value is being recognised with both the state and federal governments through providing grant support to progress the initiatives, and the project itself winning multiple awards. It is as important to embed environment within our urban areas as it is on the fringes. The heat impacts in urban environments are real. We know that greening infrastructure such as trees, gardens and green open spaces within our urban setting are just as important as having them without. We're currently undertaking a research project that will identify heat spots or heat islands in our region, which will allow us to respond to those areas and also allow us to plan for future areas of development. We need the community to pay attention to
Do you need an extension?
I do,
Councillor?
Mr Mayor.
Someone move an extension. Councillor Hungerford, seconded. Councillor Johnson, all those in favour? That's carried. Carry on.
Thank you. We need the community to pay attention, to be aware that moves are being made to erode the green spaces they wish to protect, and to be engaged with the planning scheme process. Environment and growth may seem like they appear at the opposite ends of a spectrum, but really they work hand in hand. Planning can account for areas that need to be retained for broader environmental values, whether they are treed or not, and look at where appropriate growth can occur and in what form. So this is not just a place to live, but a place where you love to live. So again, I'd call on the community to get engaged with our planning scheme. I know our consultation has finished now, but there's a lot of documentation to read through. So get on it and get ready for the draft planning scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I love the fact that this document to me represents two things, trust and confidence. Trust because it reports so incredibly succinctly and comprehensively, and I really commend the authors, all of the team that put this together, to help really explain how do we spend your money, how do we allocate it, and what do we achieve in a single year. And I love the fact that it really, on 2 pages, you could get the gist of this. And everybody will have a slightly different lens, as we've heard already, as to what they think is important. For me, I couldn't go past the fact that we announced, or the Olympics were announced, and what that meant for our region. The opportunities that are embedded in that. 8 billion human beings on the planet now, official. A big chunk of them watching the Olympics. And we have an opportunity to showcase our region in the best possible way. But more importantly, it makes us think about what we are as a region before we get there and make sure that we've got something worth saying and something worth showing. The other thing to me was the biosphere. We basically put out to an independent arbiter, an independent watchdog to say, look, this is the standards we will set ourselves as a region with man in the biosphere. And you can hold us accountable for that. And that's a really brave, brilliant thing to do when people are so concerned that we become good managers of our ecology in a world that is so volatile. The third one I really think is very important for our region, and will take some time to really deliver, which was the next DC acquisition of the submarine data cable, our landing station. A submarine cable that I like to remind everybody when I get a chance, this council made happen. And it's so intrinsically important to the future of this region and how we develop our economy around it. And last but not least, just with a portfolio hat on the launch of the Think Change program, which, as I arrived this morning, the longest queue of traffic I've ever experienced yet. So we all have a responsibility to think about how do we move around the coast before the major infrastructure arrives. Absolutely, we will keep every ounce of pressure we can on the state and federal governments to look at the transport infrastructure. You cannot expect the road network to deal with it. It won't now, and it won't as we add 50,000, 100,000, 150,000. We need the rail networks and the mass transit networks. We need an integrated transport strategy. So to me, this report very, very quickly tells our community, look, you can have trust in this council, and hopefully that will balance some of the volatility that's happening in the world, and you can have confidence that as a region, we're really doing as many of the right things as possible to make sure that we have a remarkable region going forward. And the annual report's a great insight into how we do that every year. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Landsborough.
Well, thank you through the chair, and just like to echo my fellow councillors' comments. Fully endorse everyone's comment today. It's a great platform that we have. Just a couple of highlights for myself from the annual report is obviously the work's currently being undertaken at Dicky Beach along the foreshore there. We've recently, last year, we had half a kilometre of the coastal pathway completed from Carrera Street to the Dicky Beach Skate Park, and stage 2 will be completed in December this year. It's just been one of the most heavily used coastal pathways on the coast, I reckon. We just received so much wonderful feedback from the community. We've seen over 15,000 visitors across the road at our little Caloundra Regional Art Gallery as well, so great to see those figures of the attendance, especially with the wonderful exhibitions they have. As well as the work that Council did for domestic violence and taking action of the 16 days of action in planting native trees at Mooloolaba in November last year is an important part of how we as councillors, the face of our community, obviously voice our concerns against something terrible within our own community, and personally for myself. I look forward to upcoming workshops to speak towards that. Our economy, our buy local program has been wonderfully accepted. We received over 5,500 nominations on the buy local scheme, and that actually encouraged over $500,000 of local spend in our community. So great to see us just keeping the money on the coast as well. And as well as our Aspire program, our resource exchange, we've got over 200 registered users on the Aspire program now, and we've diverted over 1,600 tonnes of material from landfill. So I think it's a great direction that we're following, especially being a biosphere now, accredited, and it just shows that we're on the front foot tackling climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsborough. Councillors and Luke, I'd also just like to add a few comments if I can, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak to our Council's annual report for the 2021-22 financial year. This is the 11th annual report which has been presented since I was first elected as Mayor of the Council in 2012, and I'm proud to update our community on what their Council has been delivering on their behalf during this past year. Having spent much of the year living with and recovering from the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, combined with the impacts of several severe weather events, there's no doubt we've faced some challenging times in this past year. Without any question, the biggest contributor to the resilience of our community has been the community itself. And I continue to see firsthand the inspiring way our Sunshine Coast communities have continued to support each other during what have been pretty enduring and challenging times, often with not a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. But with challenges come opportunities, and that's part of the role we have as councillors, is to see those opportunities and to do what we can about implementing them. And our councillors work collaboratively with residents, businesses and other tiers of government to respond to and adapt to these hurdles, while continuing to build our competitive advantage and position our region for the future. And we shouldn't ever underestimate the challenge of positioning our region. There's a lot of regions around Australia who will want to position themselves in various ways, so there's a lot of competition. But I think we do a particularly good job in having a very high profile on such a range of initiatives. The announcement by the International Olympic Committee in July 2021 that Brisbane will host the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to showcase the Sunshine Coast across the globe. And it should be remembered that the Sunshine Coast Council was one of the first in line to support the move by the Council of Mayors and put our money forward at the time to conduct the investigation into staging the Games, and indeed, most importantly, to be right at the table when the question was put and the decision was made to encourage the IOC to change their constitution to allow a regional bid. And as a consequence of that, the Sunshine Coast today, with 8 disciplines to be staged in this area, really is a tremendous beneficiary of that decision making. And it's fair to say that not since Sydney 2000 has our country hosted the world's greatest sporting event, and 2032 will certainly put our region in the spotlight. The Games provide an outstanding opportunity to showcase the natural beauty and attractions of our coastline and hinterland to a global audience. They'll also provide an economic stimulus for our region leading up to the Games, and will be a catalyst to enhance social, environmental and economic outcomes for our community. Importantly, the announcement in July last year has set in motion extensive planning for the staging of the Games and for securing an enduring legacy for our communities. Our communities continue to remain at the centre of everything we do in terms of what we have delivered over the course of this year, and that's in line with the commitments that we've made as a council in the community strategy for 2019 to 2041. Our partnerships with First Nations community continue to deepen with an Innovate Reconciliation Action Plan 2021-22, achieving endorsement from Reconciliation Australia. This is a testament to Council's commitment to build our capacity and sustain real action in how we partner with and support our First Nations community. In line with our environmental and livability strategy, our council acknowledged the existence of a global climate emergency, as Councillor Law indicated before at this meeting last year. It's been a quick year, David. And of course we are pursuing a sustained effort to achieve zero net emissions for our organisation by 2041. These decisions further supports our proactive approach to developing and implementing strong climate change policy that is evidence-based and aligned with the best available science. Our region has a well-regarded reputation for preserving and enhancing our natural assets, and the commitment was strengthened once again in June when the Sunshine Coast was officially recognised as a UNESCO Biosphere. The historic announcement was a result of more than 6 years of hard work, dedication and collaboration with our residents and the Biosphere Community Reference Group, ably led by Mr Will Shrapnel. Working together, our designation as a biosphere will help our region as we grow now and indeed for future generations. A key component of our future planning also got underway in earnest during the year as we advanced the development of our new Sunshine Coast Planning Scheme. Shaped by a community reference group, Council conducted an extensive community engagement process between February and March, which received a high level of feedback that will inform the development of our new planning scheme. While Council is not responsible for the delivery and operation of public transport on the Sunshine Coast, we have an important role to play on behalf of our community to plan and advocate for a more sustainable, efficient and reliable public transport network. Following extensive engagement with our community, Council endorsed the Sunshine Coast Mass Transit Options Analysis report in October last year and submitted it to the Queensland Government. Our Regional Economic Development Strategy 2013 to 33 has continued to shape our resilient economy and underpin the significant growth and investment that has enabled our region to grow to an $18.5 billion economy in our region today. Maroochydore City Centre has continued to progress at a rate of knots, and in December data centre operator NextDC purchased the International Broadband Submarine Cable Landing Station from Council in an $8 million deal that will create more jobs and stimulate more investment in our region. And this, Council, is another example of our Council's great ability to take on projects, de-risk them and then seek funding from the private sector. Of paramount importance in continuing to deliver for our community is the responsible management of budget and resources. And I'm proud to announce that despite the challenges of the pandemic, our Council has achieved its 14th consecutive year with an unmodified audit opinion. To this end, I'd like to acknowledge and thank all of Council staff for their exceptional work in delivering Council's many services and programs and continuing to lift and drive service excellence during challenging times last year. It is this work and our community partners that is helping to position our region for the future and advance our vision of being Australia's most sustainable region, healthy, smart and creative. Councillors, I commend this report to you and thank our officers. Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for this report. In relation to service excellence, the service excellence portfolio encompasses a large portion of the council operations, infrastructure, which takes in roads, parks, various buildings, community assets. In addition to that, town planning and development services and our service call centre and animal management, which are all really important parts of council. This year, some of our program was interrupted by, or last year I should say, was interrupted by bad weather. Despite that, a great deal of work was done and completed, and there was some carryover into this financial year. In relation to the planning department, record applications for development, record building applications, record plumbing applications, etc. And it's really great work that's been done by that department, as has been done with all of our departments in relation to animal control. And I'd like to commend the officers and the department for the great job that they have been doing in that department, and working with the community to try and get a better result for the community. There's still work to be done in every area. But for instance, last financial year, we completed rehabilitation and resurfacing of some 488 kilometres of sealed roads. Some 83.5 kilometres of roads were resurfaced or rehabilitated at a cost of $22.9 million. Some people say to me sometimes, why are you spending money resealing roads when we've got gravel roads that need sealing? Well, if you don't every so often reseal a bitumen road or refurbish it, it falls into a bad condition and eventually returns to become a gravel road. So it's important that we look after our assets. The same goes with all the hard work that's been done in our parks and gardens, our playgrounds, etc., etc. So I'd just like to commend all of the council operation staff, as well as the departmental heads, for the great job that they've done during the year on behalf of the community, and thank them very much. And I can't go past without saying that the personal assistants that each one of the councillors have do a fantastic job. They do a lot of work behind the scenes that the public never sees. Sometimes the councillors don't even see what they do, and I think they should be congratulated as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. If there are no further speakers, I'm going to go back to Councillor Hungerford. No need to close. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Luke. 8.2 is the financial statements and community financial report. I'd invite Janine Wex to give us her presentation. Thanks, Janine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, everyone. I'm here to present the 21-22 audited financial statements and community financial reports. So our financial statements have been audited by the Queensland Audit Office, and as Mr. Mayor said, we did receive an unmodified audit opinion for the 14th year in a row. The auditors have also audited our current year financial sustainability statement, which shows us our operating surplus ratio, our net financial liabilities ratio and asset sustainability ratio. They don't audit our long-term financial sustainability statement because they can't audit estimates. So that's based on our budget. We derived an operating surplus of $10.2 million for the year. And the fact that we did receive an unmodified audit opinion means that our financial statements give a true and fair view of our financial position, financial performance and cash flows. They also comply with all appropriate legislation and Australian accounting standards. The results of all Queensland local government audits are published in the annual Auditor General report to Parliament, which is usually released around February of the following year. One of the attachments is the Queensland Audit Office Final Management Report, so that details any outstanding issues and items that came up as a result of the final audit. Now, previously they would advise all issues that they found during the year, but now they're just showing the ones that are still in progress. So we have 4. The first one is around a manual review. Oh no, I'm sorry. The first one is about implementing a formal review of the useful lives of assets. Now, Council has a more informal review in place, but we need to formalise that going forward. That's due for the next set of financial statements, and that's on track. The next one is a significant deficiency in the payroll system and processes. Now, this one had 6 actions 5 actions. 4 of them are completed. There's 1 left, and that's on track for resolution by the end of this month. Following that, we have a significant deficiency around payroll and accounts payable system controls. So in that one, we had 6 actions, 3 are resolved, and we have 3 remaining that require external system configuration. Now, these are on track for the end of the financial year. Note that with these deficiencies, there are no known breaches as a result of QAO identifying these. Now, the last one is the full comprehensive revaluation of the other infrastructure asset class. Now, that's our asset class that is a bit of a catch-all. It will have waste cells or picnic tables. It has high variability but low materiality. It's worth less than 10% of council's asset base. We weren't able to complete the full comprehensive asset revaluation of that class this financial year, but to mitigate any risk of being materially incorrect, we implemented some indices to make sure that the values were material correct for our financial statements. We'll be completing that work for this financial year. In addition to the financial statements, we also prepare a community financial report that is an easy to understand explanation of council's financial statements. It will be included in the annual report, as will the financial statements. In addition, council's controlled entities were also audited by the Queensland Audit Office. So that includes Sun Central Maroochydore and Sunshine Coast Arts Foundation Limited. They prepare a full suite of financial statements. They also received an unmodified audit opinion from the Queensland Audit Office, and their annual reports will be published on council's website as well, following adoption today. Our other controlled entity, Sunshine Coast Events Centre, their annual report will be available in early December. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Someone to move the report? Councillor Hungerford. Seconder, Councillor Natoli. Thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor?
With pleasure, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Janine, and I'll go through some of those points again. It gives me great pleasure to present this and speak to it today. This is our 2021-22 financial statements. This is our community financial report. The Queensland Audit Office, as has been stated, has given us our 14th consecutive unmodified audit in a row. Has to be a record for a local government. Not only that, they've also given an unmodified appraisal of our controlled entities. Sun Central Maroochydore Proprietary Limited, Sunshine Coast Events Centre Proprietary Limited, and the Sunshine Coast Arts Foundation Limited. This means this report gives a true and fair view of council's and the group's financial position as of the 30th of June 2022 and of our financial performance and cash flows for the year ended. Complies with the Local Government Act 2009 and the Local Government Regulation 2012 and the Australian accounting standards. These results will be included in the annual Auditor General report to Parliament on the results of local government audits, and this will be published in early 2023. Now, I have mentioned before we've got the negative knockers out there. They're always trying to say the council's got poor financial control and debt problems and everything else. I saw another one the other day. As I was reading this report, afterwards I read this one, and I took a quote out of that one. I will look forward to above inflation rate rises over the next decade. Really? Considering all our financial reports, and we report on this every month in the meetings, all that information's out there, and you still get statements like that. Incredible. But let's look at it. In the 14 unmodified audits, I can't recall above inflation rate rises. In fact, in 2021, we gave a $35 COVID rebate to our community, effectively a zero rate rise, and still delivered a balanced budget. Not only that, with Queensland Treasury, we've got a strong credit rating. we're one of only 2 or 3 councils in Queensland have the highest rating you can have. That's out of 77 councils in Queensland. We're leaders, we're out in the front. And when it comes to this budget, I am absolutely confident that we can deliver again a below CPI rate rise. Can you get this thing above inflation rate rises over the next decade? The only thing I can give to that is I say to the community out there, take the cliche from the movie The Castle. Tell them they're dreaming. They've got no idea what they're talking about. And in fact, it's misleading to the community to make those sort of statements with their financial statements all in the public realm. And the highest ratings from QAO and our credit rating. Councillors, we can be proud of this, but not only that, our finance staff who are excellent. You don't get those without that hard work that goes into it each time. There's a lot of work goes into getting an unmodified audit. And the discipline throughout the year. The whole organisation and those delivering on the ground goes through to everyone. We should be proud of it. The staff should be proud of it. More importantly, our community should be proud of it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Today, obviously, is a series of report cards for our community, and in my opinion, there's no one greater than our financial accounts and the statements that we're being presented here as item 8.2. It's like getting an A+. The Queensland Audit Office have given us, as Councillor Hungerford said, one of the highest ratings out of the 77 councils in Queensland. And that's something I think our community needs to be very proud of. I mean, the people in this room that make those decisions, we're very aware of the important role of handling ratepayer money with great diligence. And so, as part of a growth council, we've got a lot of pressures applied to us from the community to deliver certain pieces of infrastructure. Obviously, Sunshine Coast is a great place to live, and the popularity is bringing those increased pressures. So that brings me to the staff. I just wanted to thank you guys, yourself, Janine, and the finance team, Michael and Isaac, and everyone that's behind the scenes there, because you guys keep us accountable. Sometimes we come up with grand visions and plans, but I like the way you guys ground us and keep us on track. So I just wanted to say thank you for doing that, because I know that sometimes we can go off on tangents, but it's nice to continually align ourselves with those corporate strategies. A couple of things I just wanted to touch on, though, was the community financial statement, which was one of the attachments to the report. For me, that is a really great way for our community to sort of break down in simple form exactly what we're doing on behalf of our community. That community equity graph, I think if anyone takes time to go and read the report and they see how much the value of our assets are and the debt that we owe, it's an incredible proportion that we own, or the community owns, and that we manage on their behalf. So I just encourage anyone that's, as Councillor Hungerford mentioned, we do get people suggesting that maybe we're not as good as what we appear. But if they were to read that and take note of everything that's mentioned, I think they'll soon change their tune. So, I just encourage anyone that's out there to certainly have a read of that particular community financial statement. One thing that I did want to just touch on, though, was the council control entities, and there's a series of, obviously, reports. The Maroochydore Sun Central one was the one I just wanted to touch on. I note that their AGM, I think, is on Monday, coming on Monday, and I know that the documentation isn't going to change because the information is applicable to the 21-22 financial year. It just would have been nice to have had some validation, I suppose, of having that AGM before it's presented here. So I'm not too sure if that's something that the CEO, acting CEO, can take on notice. That I think it would be quite worthwhile to potentially have that AGM ahead of this presentation to council. So maybe we could look at the dates for next year. But that being said, I'm just so supportive of what we're doing on behalf of our community, and I just think, we can't afford to rest on our laurels. 14 unmodified audits in a row is an outstanding achievement, places us amongst the top 3 councils in Queensland, and when I say top 3, it's equal top 3. So well done to the team, and I will be fully endorsing this here today.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Mr Matheson, you had something you wanted to add?
Sorry, through the Chair, Councillor Cox, you raised a very valid issue in terms of the sequencing of the consideration of the financial statements of Sun Central as a controller entity of council. Is one we've identified. We are out of sequence, and I believe we were out of sequence last year as well. So it's a matter we've taken up with Sun Central with a view to next year getting the sequence right.
Thank you. If there are no further speakers, Councillor Hungerford, would you like to close?
Commend this to you, Mr Mayor. Excellent result, and one we can all be proud of, and our community can be proud of it as well. I present this to you, councillors, and it's an excellent result.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Johnson was absent. Rightio, let's move on to item, and thank you, Janine, move on to item 8.3, which is the Transport Levy Annual Report, and invite Mr Pecoraro to give us a presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. This agenda report provides information on the initiatives undertaken as part of the Transport Levy program by the way of an annual report for 2021-22 and Appendix A. The Transport Levy has the primary aim of enabling Council to progress strategic transport outcomes to benefit the community today and into the future. The annual report provides an overview of achievements through 2021-22 and increases awareness of how the levy is applied. I'd like to acknowledge the various teams across Council that participate in delivering the Transport Levy initiatives as part of their roles and responsibilities. Equally, I would like to thank the community groups, schools and businesses that participated in Transport Levy initiatives this year. For 2021-22, the levy remained at $44 per rateable property and raised just over $6.5 million. The funding was applied across the 5 sub-programs of the Transport Levy, as depicted on the graphic. The Transport Futures Fund balance now stands at just over $21.5 million. The levy was successful in leveraging almost $400,000 of additional external funding. A continuation of existing services was part of the 2021-22 levy program. We saw the continued operation of 2 FlexiLink services, the Council Link service, and continued support of the community-run Kenilworth service. The annual report includes some key statistics to give an indication on the use of each service. The levy funding assisted to complete upgrades to a further 25 bus stops. It leveraged the state funding program, which enabled provision of a mix of new shelters on high patronage bus stops frequented by seniors, as well as bike parking facilities at bus stops on the existing cycle network. The endorsement by Council in May 2022 of Think Change, Council's branded travel behaviour change program, is a significant step forward and a key action of the integrated transport strategy. There's now a commitment to work with the community to improve long-term outcomes for the Sunshine Coast. The approach to be taken through Think Change is to help everyone on the Sunshine Coast to identify ways of making change which could reduce the need for travel, reduce car use or use it more efficiently, and facilitate awareness of alternative travel choices, particularly for short trips. A number of pilot initiatives were identified for progression with engaged participating partners. Ride Score is a partnered initiative with We Ride Australia. It is now established at 9 schools and had 1,400 registered participants at the end of June. The primary aim is the reduction of private vehicle trips to school. The Sunshine Coast Mass Transit Project is a major initiative under the Transport Levy. The completion of the options analysis phase is a major milestone in the overall process. The Queensland Government, through the Department of Transport and Main Roads, and in collaboration with Council as a funding partner, will now lead the detailed business case phase. Transport and Main Roads is progressing the establishment of a project team and governance arrangements to undertake the project. It's recommended that Council note the Transport Levy Annual Report 2021-22 at Appendix A, following which it will be made available through Council's website.
Thank you, Mr Pecoraro. Moved by Councillor Babarowski, seconded by Councillor Law. Thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Babarowski?
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. It'd be my pleasure. First of all, George, a really good presentation of the annual report. Thank you very much to the team for that. I've always, our councillors will probably, I've always been a little bit envious of the environment report and how strongly and graphically they present the annual report. I think ours has caught up. It's really, really good and easy to understand, and a very important way that the community could understand how do we use your funds. Because this is, as Councillor Cox said earlier on, this is a report card. Why are we in this space? As I've already mentioned this morning, I joined the longest possible queue of traffic into Caloundra, and I mentioned it to the Mayor, and his observation rightly was, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing it, and how many of those cars had one occupant in them. And I quickly retorted, well, what's their alternative? We've got to remind ourselves that unless you've got an alternative to the private car, in other words, a really strong competitive public transport system, they have no choice. Pretty much every adult in our region has no choice. They have to move around by cars. And, you know, that is an absolute indictment of the investment by the state and the feds in this region. And again, we must take every opportunity possible. In the next year, it'll be pivotal. This next year, the state will make key announcements on mass transit, on the Sunshine Coast Direct Line, the major investments in the transport infrastructure in this region, obviously leading up to the 2032 Olympics. We must listen very carefully and hold them to very high account if they underdo what we need in this region. So having said that, what are the levy outcomes as reported in the report? As you've heard, we've got better bus stops. And moving into the summer, isn't it important that we put shelters over as many as possible? We've got the continuation of our FlexiLink, and remind yourself what FlexiLink does. FlexiLink is that service that helps people on the fringes of the public transport network get to the public transport network or our major centres where it is. Comlink helps our over 60s or people with mobility difficulties to again get from where they are into our major centres. As you heard, 2,700 passenger trips on the FlexiLink and 11,200 passengers on the Comlink, and not to forget Kenilworth. A really strong community initiative with their community transport system. They've got 199 passengers registered for that. But there are standouts in the new initiatives. So I'd really like to call out again how well the Ride Score program is developing. Terrific. It uses basically an app and Bluetooth as a beacon, which helps the parents know when they've arrived safely, when they've departed. There's now 1,400 students as of June 2022 registered for that program. and 9 schools so far. The other, I think, standout initiative we've already mentioned a few times, but I'm going to keep mentioning it because we all have to think about how we move around now. Even with the best case scenario that we get major announcements in the next year or so on infrastructure projects, they take years to deliver. And the growth is still coming every year. So we need to think about how we use our vehicles, how we move around, and as Mr Pecoraro pointed out, look, if we don't do that, the congestion is going to become real significant impact on the quality of life for our community of communities. So think change. The heavyweight ones, though, as you've already heard, really was the Sunshine Coast Mass Transit options analysis. We should be proud of ourselves. We did incredibly good work and then have handed that over to the state. And we now need to listen very carefully on the outcome of the detailed business case that the state will deliver, I would hope, in the next year. And the other one to me is our modelling. We do an incredibly good job of working with TMR, the state, on the modelling of our transport network. And it's one of those things that underpins almost everything else that you do. So again, I'd like to commend yourself on really, I would argue, in being the principal designers of that modelling process that the state recognised was so good we thought, well, we better not duplicate it, we'll work with you. So congratulations on that. And councillors, the annual report, as we've already said, is a great way of the community understanding how we spend the transport levy, and again it contributes to those 2 words again. They can have tremendous trust that we use their funds wisely, and they can have confidence that this region does its very best to plan the best transport outcomes we possibly can, even though we don't pull most of the levers, the state and the feds do.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Natali.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I support most of the comments that the Deputy Mayor made. The question for me is really, I suppose, having this transparency, $21.5 million sitting in a future fund that really the report doesn't actually tell us what we're going to invest that money. It says that we can't use it for subsidising current or proposed public transport services contracted by the state. So I'm trying to understand what we're actually going to use it for. Councillor Babarowski is absolutely right. Congestion is a problem right now. And there is no other alternative. It's thrown around, Councillor Dixon and myself made comments about even 12 months free public transport, buses. Get people in now, fix the problem, see whether we can actually move 10% of those people. And it's a great time to do it. Cost of living going through the roof, fuel. What a great way of encouraging people to get out of their cars and get into a bus. And the buses are running around almost empty. It is an opportunity we should seize, but we can't use this future fund to even put 1 cent towards encouraging the state government to try and find a solution now. Yet we're banking 60% of our future fund for something that the public has no idea what the hell we're going to put our money in. We need to act now rather than wait for investing that money. So I would hope that in the future maybe we'd be a little bit more open about what that money is going to be used for.
Can you shed any light on that?
Through you, Mr Mayor. The Transport Futures Fund was established in recognition that past projects such as the Gold Coast Light Rail was established through a tripartite funding agreement, and Council decided probably 6 or 7 years ago that it would prepare to have funds available to contribute not only funds but probably in kind as well when the time came. So that's what the funding is being set aside for. It's set aside for the establishment of that future mass transit outcome, but it's not there to run services.
Thank you. That's as I recall our decision of the day. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for the report, George. I just wanted to put on the record the Think Change program. I did pledge last year that I would ride to work, and I have successfully ticked that off just very recently, but I've done it in the 12 months. But I'd like to talk about the Ride School program. I know I have a number of schools in Division 9 who are party to that. One of those is Bly State Primary School, who don't seem to have the same numbers as some of the other schools, and that's probably due to a bit of the topography. It's quite a hilly area to and from that school, but I'd just like to encourage the students of Bly and the parents of Bly to get their kids out there that have signed up to the Ride School program and use their bikes, and by having those hard yards of having to pedal up those hills, they'll probably be well ahead of the curve to their other schools in terms of maybe going into the mountain biking event at the Olympics, who knows. So I'd just like to put a shout out for those kids to get on their bikes and do the hard yards. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. I'm speaking to support the report of the Transport Levy, get that right. My apologies. There are some really important elements to the work that we do through the levy, and thank you for sharing those in this report. Two things I'd like to highlight is the continuing support for the Kenilworth Transport Service. It's an example where the community has come together, collaborated with council to provide a solution for an area that will probably never see any kind of public transport or alternative transport option other than a personal individual car of some description, whatever they may be in the future. So for me, it's really important that we have the ability through this levy and through this framework to continue to support that service, and I appreciate the support that we can. Because for that community, it makes a huge difference, particularly among the elderly people who can't drive or don't have a car or who don't feel confident to drive anymore. But it's also good for the young people out there who don't yet have their own car, but they can now access the wider community and enjoy all the benefits of the Sunshine Coast because of this service. So thank you for that. I also wish to again highlight the Think Change project that we endorsed in the last year. That is one of the most important things that we can do for our community, is to get them to think change. And one of the things I don't accept is there is no alternative, because actually there is an alternative, but the difficulty is it's difficult. There are choices that we can make, but they're difficult choices. It's taken Councillor Suarez a year to honour her commitment to ride to work. And I hope that having done it once, you will continue. But there are alternatives. It's just their hard work. We have to do something different. We have to plan our day differently. We have to accept that there are alternatives. And potentially as a community, we have to accept that there are alternatives to building more and more roads. What if we built more and more active pathways and networks? We could probably build far more kilometres of roads suitable for people to walk or cycle or use electric bikes than we would ever build to fill all of the space we need for our cars. So we don't actually know what the future holds, but we can encourage everybody, starting with ourselves, to make that personal commitment to think change and to actually make a difference. And you don't have to do the big things, you can do the little things. Instead of during a week going out to do your grocery shopping every day of the week, actually do like it used to be, when it used to be harder to get around and you would actually plan and you would get your groceries once a week. If you do that, you may find that you reduce the number of individual trips you do in a car by 3 or 4 per week. And that's what the Think Change programme can help you to do. So I encourage everyone to get involved in that space and look at how you could do your daily travelling differently to make a reduction on the number of vehicles on the road, the number of trips that you do. How many trips can you do differently? And hey, maybe you could even find that there's a bus route that actually does run on time, will get you there in a reasonable amount of time, and is effective and useful. We don't have to wait for some infrastructure to happen. We can start using it now. And if we start using it now, then maybe we'll get more frequency. We don't get more frequency because we don't get the service used. If we start using the service, we get more frequency. We just have to think change. So, yes, it's difficult, but there is a choice, and we need to examine and investigate those choices on a personal level, because it's a very long wait if you're going to wait for someone to do it for you. So I certainly commend this report. I urge everyone to support it today, and I urge everyone to get involved in Think Change and to start with themselves and then actually let others know that there are alternatives that you can make. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Law. If there are no further speakers, I'm going to go back to Councillor Babarowski to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for all of those comments. They're all really important insights into how complex this subject is. I wouldn't mind addressing a couple of points made. One, I'll start with the last one, because I think Councillor Law made a very good point, that in no way should we wait, can we wait for the major infrastructure projects to be delivered in this region. They, by their very nature, are years away, even if the decision was made tomorrow. So yes, we absolutely have to think about how we move around now and make some decisions about that. I might ask a question, if I may, before I can resume. And George, would you like to remind us what our mode shift targets are, and what we are now, what our mode shift targets are, and how the Think Change helps us get to those targets, but still the greater challenge of the transport network remains?
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Chair, currently our mode split is about 85% car, 3% public transport and 12% active transport. We would like to get and achieve 70% car, 10% public transport and 20% active transport. So a significant reduction in car, significant uptake of public transport and active transport. Now there is capacity, as Councillor Law said, in the public transport network, so if you can get yourself to the PT network, you'll be able to get on and use the system now. So there's an immediate opportunity there. In terms of active transport, yes, we do need to look at our network to encourage people to walk and cycle more. There's certainly emerging technology in terms of e-powered machinery, personal mobility devices that I think will take a lot of pressure off short trips with cars. And Think Change, that's one of the early low-hanging fruit elements of Think Change, is to ask people to have a think about, well, do you really need to take your car for a trip that's 1 or 2 kilometres down to the shop and back? You can walk, you can ride a bike, you might have a new e-scooter, legal one of course, and an e-bike. And it's that sort of encouragement to show people, well, it is easy, it can be done, and you should take that opportunity, because it not only helps you, it'll help the community as a whole. So it will take time to roll out, and as mentioned, there are 5 pilot programs at the moment, a couple with schools, one with development, and others as well, that we're trying to start small, prove the pilot scheme, and then roll it out further afield. So it will take time, but everyone can take the journey, as Councillor Law said. Look at what you do, replan your day a little bit, and there is opportunity there if you want to take it.
May I resume a close? Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for that slight indulgence of asking a question in the middle of the close. I thought it was important, though, councillors, to remind ourselves that without Think Change, without improvements to the active transport network, you're not going to get anywhere close to 20%. This is not going to happen. But in terms of volumes, the increase in private cars, by sheer account of the increases to our population, is coming as well. You're not going to reduce the number of cars, you're going to reduce the increase of the number of cars if we get a really good take-up of active transport. So again, in no way do I step back from the pressure or for the role that this council takes on keeping the pressure up through our understanding of our transport network, provided by the resources of the Transport Levy, which I'm so grateful for this community to support. Thank them very much and thank this council for it, because without it, we are in serious, serious trouble in terms of our quality of our life. So thank you, Councillor, for reminding us that again. And if I may, one very quick anecdote. Again, like Councillor Maria Suarez, I challenged myself I was going to do a cycle from Aura through to Caloundra because I got feedback that it was difficult. And that's got one of the best off-road cycle networks ever. But of course, the argument was that it doesn't continue all the way through to Caloundra. So I'll ride it. So I actually booked out one of our EVs, not because I'm such a wimp that I couldn't ride it on a push bike, but I thought it would be a nice opportunity to try one of these EV bikes at the same time. I'm glad I did, really glad I did. It was over 35 minutes in the heat. If I hadn't had the EV bike, I would not have enjoyed that trip at all. And I would have made probably a judgment in my head, no, this does not work. The economics of it in terms of time and cost just don't make sense. I wouldn't cycle even if I lived in Aura and wanted to get into Caloundra. So again, I'm just making the point that EV technology, active transport, very often is about the last and first mile. It gets you to the major public transport infrastructure that you then utilise. I doubt that anybody would sensibly argue that it will take over commuting, the commuter trip. When you're the size of a small country, as this region is, a community of well over 40 different community hubs. So again, just reminding you that, look, we're doing great work. This is a great annual report on the Transport Levy, and thank you very much for preparing it so succinctly. The graphics are great. I commend it to you, councillors, for your support.
Thank you, Councillor Dabrowski. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll do one more before morning tea break. 8.4. Thank you, George. 8.4 is the Environment Levy Annual Report. I invite Craig Doolan to give us a presentation. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity this morning to present the Environment Levy Annual Report for the 2021-2022 financial year for your consideration and endorsement. The annual communication of the Environment Levy Program achievements will ensure that the wider community and key stakeholders are aware of the outcomes achieved by Council and community volunteers through the program throughout the year. The development and implementation of the Environment Levy Program is guided by Council's Environment and Livability Strategy and the Environment Levy Policy and associated guideline. Council's Environment and Livability Strategy sets a long-term strategic direction for a healthy environment and livable Sunshine Coast in 2041. Revenue raised through the Environment Levy provides funding to assist Council and the broader community to work towards the desired outcomes and targets set for our natural environment, which includes biodiversity, waterways and wetlands and coastal areas. As done in previous years, the annual program report has been graphically designed and presents the connection to the Environment and Livability Strategy. In 2021-2022, $13.2 million of Environment Levy revenue was invested into a range of activities. This included just under $7 million into buying, protecting and enhancing environmentally significant lands, $2.1 million to a range of operational activities, including flying fox and pest management and support for our education centres, $2 million into our community support and engagement programs, $1.4 million into on-ground environment projects, including catchment and coastal rehabilitation, and $616,000 into building our knowledge through research and monitoring. Some of the highlights and achievements from this investment have been the acquisition of 4 further properties totalling 164 hectares that contribute to our conservation estate and consolidation of our major green spaces. The first regional erosion and sediment education trial facility established, which was recently runner-up to the prestigious Education Awards at IECA, the International Erosion Control Association. over $315,000 to landholder environment grants, contributing to further environmental enhancement on privately owned assets, over $1 million of Healthy Coast Major Green Space to manage coastal weeds and rehabilitate dunes, nearly $500,000 towards community pest action and engagement, 5 new voluntary conservation agreements, bringing the total to 92 and protecting 1,425 hectares of land within the Sunshine Coast. And we've maintained our annual partnership with Healthy Land and Water, assisting us to track our progress towards our ELS waterways and wetlands target. More broadly, the annual program has contributed towards transforming the Sunshine Coast and delivering on the organisation's strategic directions. Councillors, I'd like to thank you for your time, short but brief, but I recommend that you note the Environment Levy report and acknowledge and thank the community groups, students, teachers and volunteers that have contributed to the program throughout 2021-2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone to move? Councillor Cox, thank you. Councillor Suarez, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Cox?
Be great. Thanks, Mr Mayor. Appreciate the report, Craig. Always great to see what we're doing on behalf of our community for the environment on the Sunshine Coast. You know, we talk about an $80 investment with the Environment Levy, and that investment raises around about $12 million, and we've seen that there was expenditure of over $13 million in the last financial year. So we're getting extremely good value for money out of that. But when I read through the report, there's a couple of key achievements, and I know that you've touched on a number of those significant ones in your presentation this morning, but for me, from my perspective, a couple of things that I just wanted to touch on, which are those transformational actions under our environment and livability strategy. And the first one is the one that we call stopping the brown from coming down. Essentially, that is reducing the impacts of sediment, nutrients and pollutants on our waterways and the health of our waterways, obviously. So I know you've touched on it, but the establishment of the Regional Erosion and Sediment Education and Trial Facility at Caloundra, and councillors, if you haven't had the opportunity to go and inspect that, it is it's a great facility for learning about the principles of erosion and sediment control. And as we know, it's just won an award, so it's a really great achievement. And the learnings that are coming from that facility through the development that's occurring on the Sunshine Coast are certainly notable, and we can hopefully see improvements to our waterway health as a result of this particular facility. I note that there's been over 500 sites visited by our Construction Management and Waterway Protection Task Force. 500 sites where our officers have been going out and looking at, obviously, compliance, but also ensuring that best practice in that erosion and sediment control is being undertaken by our developers out there. The other one is under our Healthy Coast. And I note that around 300 hectares is being managed through our coastal foreshore network. So that's a removal of weeds and obviously helping our dunes to be stabilised and protected in weather events. So when I look through this, I realise that we're doing some great work. It's full of good news, but we must remain vigilant against the threats to our regional urban interbreak. If people don't know what that is, and I know that there's many in our community that still struggle with the concept of what the interurban break is all about, it's that key area between the Glasshouse Mountains and the Pumice-Stone Passage. Very significant, environmentally sensitive, and must be protected at all costs, because we're under increasing development pressures from the coast, as Councillor Suarez mentioned when we were dealing with item 8.1, where you were talking about the just open up the land and that'll fix the housing crisis. I agree, it won't. And we must preserve that for our future generations, because once it's gone, it's gone. So, councillors, I look forward to hearing any debate on this particular item. I will be fully endorsing this here today and encourage you to do likewise.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to add to the comments that Councillor Cox made in terms of the Environment Levy. This report shows how our money is being spent, how the levy money is being spent, and if it's being spent wisely. So we heard about the priority land acquisitions for environmental protection and improvement, and the activities to improve the water quality of our rivers and also protect our coastline. I actually wanted to say stop the brown from coming down because it's just fun to say. Peter touched on the number of inspections that the team had undertaken, but I think more importantly it's the results that are being achieved by the team that really should be the focus of, how effective this program has been. Not only did they undertake these inspections, but the development industry have embraced the education and the advice given to them and taken action. So I commend the community and the people who did have an inspection in the actions that they took to assist. We also do a lot of management on our council-owned lands for weeds and feral pests to manage our biosecurity risks. The research partnerships and education programs include the wonderful Kids in Action program. I was sorry to miss the conference day. I was not well, and I thank Councillor Law for stepping in on the day. Recently, the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and myself attended the Baringa State School Totally Awesome project, and it totally was awesome. It was really great to see how the kids got involved. But not only that, Jason Hunt, the state member for Caloundra, was there as well, and I think you missed it, Mr Mayor, but he was playing in that sand pit very enthusiastically. So it's great to see that these initiatives have been developed by children, but then educating not only fellow students, they're also educating their parents and adults as well. Yeah, and also just reiterate your last points to thank the community and the volunteers, and particularly one of the partnerships I'm very proud that Council supports is the Land for Wildlife initiative. Without all of the residents across the Sunshine Coast signing up to that project, we couldn't do it on our own in terms of offering some environmental and biodiversity across our region. So I also encourage the fellow councillors to support this report.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. If there are no further speakers, I'll go back to Councillor Cox. Do you need to close, Councillor?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor, because it was remiss of me not to mention a couple of other things. Who could forget the biosphere announcement? That was one of the key achievements for the Environment Levy last year. I know the Mayor mentioned it in his address earlier for the annual report, but to have that UNESCO recognition, 3 biospheres in a row, that is a globally unique position. So it really solidifies our region as part of this fantastic biosphere reserve that is recognised globally. So that, how could I forget that? But the one thing I did want to touch on is just that I know this year there's been a couple of tweaks to our reports, our levy reports, and I noted that last year's Environment Levy report was 8 pages. This year it's down to 6. I potentially have a little bit of concern with that because once you take out the front cover and the back cover, we're down to 4. I'd like to see, potentially, and this would be a request I've put through to our staff at our portfolio meetings, that we give the community probably a little bit more information than what we actually provide, because we do so much on behalf of our community, and I think that we need to be celebrating it and telling the full story. So it's great news, and I think we need to probably share a little bit more in depth about what we actually do. But councillors, that aside, I look forward to your support here today.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, that might be an appropriate time to take a break. Can we be back at 11 a.m, please? Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're going to go to item 8.5, which is the Cultural Heritage Annual Report. And I welcome Peter Connell. Thanks, Peter, for a presentation.
Good morning, councillors. So the purpose of this morning's presentation is to deliver the annual report for the Cultural Heritage Levy for 2021-2022 financial year. The Heritage Plan is the core document that we're delivering through the Heritage Levy, and essentially it's all about preserving and promoting the history and heritage of the Sunshine Coast. So in this slide here we have the breakdown of the revenue and expenditure. So there was 1.934 million in revenue collected through the rates, and some additional funding from the restricted cash. I will go through some of the 5 key areas of the Heritage Plan, but just on this slide I'll very quickly mention the Heritage Levy policy has a 4% allocation each year for the Built Heritage Conservation Fund, which is $77,294. Of that amount, $43,500 was spent on the Voluntary Lighthouse, and the remaining 33, which is in the diagram there, 794 was allocated into the into the restricted cash for the Built Heritage Fund. And under the policy, the Heritage Futures Fund allocates 33% of the levy, which is around $637,000, and that is to deliver capital projects, the Regional Collection Store and Interpretive Centre, and this year a $200,000 project was commenced, and an initial $20,000 was allocated to the project in the 21-22 financial year. Any unspent levy funding from the whole program goes into the Futures Fund under the policy at the end of the year. So it was $757,000 that was banked into the Futures Fund at the end of 21-22. So I'll quickly go through the 5 outcome areas. So knowledge, a couple of the highlights there is the inaugural Historian in Residence program, with 2 professional historians appointed, mapping First Nations sites in the region and looking at sporting history since 1901. We digitised over 8,000 items from the Bill Robertson Heritage Library collection for public access through the library catalogues, and also added 14,000 objects to the Cultural Heritage Collection through the acquisition of Landsborough Museum. In terms of conservation, a couple of key projects is the Paths and Patio project at Bankford House to increase programming space and improve connection and accessibility across the precinct. There were obviously costs associated with our facilities of Bankford House and Landsborough Museum, and Landsborough Museum is subject to another report this morning. In terms of support, some of the key highlights is relating to all the grants programs. So there were 5 projects supported through the Events and Exhibitions Grants program, and 5 programs supported through the Collections Care program, and 16 heritage groups and community museums supported through the Community Partnership Funding program. We were also successfully supported projects from Yinabara, Cubby Cubby and the Descendants of Australian South Sea Islanders in 21-22. In terms of communication, the Regional Heritage Discovery Guide was reprinted, and we had a number of programs supporting the development of youth in the region. So a Cultural Heritage Prize in partnership with the University of the Sunshine Coast, and also some internship positions through the My Summer Workplace program. And under the levy management and advocacy, we have 4 full-time equivalent staff whose responsibilities include the management of key programs in the Heritage Levy and also manage our sites of Bankford House and Landsborough Museum. and the endorsement of the Arts and Heritage Levy Strategy Policy in June 2022 was a key achievement this year. So, councillors, the recommendations is to receive and note the report of the Cultural Heritage Levy Annual Report for 21-22, note the graphic design version of the annual report for promoting Heritage Levy outcomes, and acknowledge and thank the volunteers of the region's community museums, heritage associations and groups that have contributed to the Heritage Levy program for 21-22.
Someone to move? Councillor Babarowski, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Law, thank you. I'd like to open, Councillor Babarowski.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Councillors, it's my pleasure, first of all, to Officer Peter and all of the Heritage team. Well done. It's I certainly used to suffer from report envy, as I've already said, with the Environment Levy report being so effective. I think we do match it with the infographics. It helps people to instantly understand how we utilise the levy and what for and why. It is absolutely an essential provision of resources so that we can implement a 10-year heritage plan. It gives us the ability to look after, to understand, first of all, and then make decisions about what heritage we preserve and conserve and interpret, not only for us, but perhaps even more importantly for future generations, to help them calibrate how we're going. There are some strategic standouts. I think the key resources that we started to allocate to the collection at the Landsborough Museum was critical for us to understand what have we done here? What have we taken on? 14,000 objects. What sort of condition are they in? And we started that process in the last year. Community partnerships funding for 16 orgs, as you've heard. The work commencing on the collection store or archive and interpretive centre. Nice to see 108,000 visits to our heritage website. And a surge, you could describe it definitely as a surge in visitation to Bankford House. Bankford House is now one of the two heritage precincts that council manages, the second one being Landsborough, but that's a very new task for us. The new initiative that I thought again was pretty standout, thank you for profiling it, but I wouldn't mind amplifying it a little bit, which is our historians in residence. That's a really good thing for us to be able to do, which basically says that we will commission a deep dive into particular aspects of our heritage. And the first two, as you've heard today, was First Nations and sporting history. The next two are coming. So that's a very good way for us to use the word definitively is always very challenging because generally you can't know everything and you always see everything through the lens of a particular time. But that gives us the resources to do really good detailed studies. So again, thanks to the team for doing the work on that. As I'd like to amplify my thanks to the region's volunteers. I think it's pretty obvious, isn't it, that even though we now operate two facilities, Bankford House and Landsborough, we couldn't do it without the assistance of the volunteers. But there are many other facilities that are completely run by volunteers, and this levy does provide them with some resources in terms of workshops and so on, and some expertise. But if you think about whether it's Yamundi, Nambour, Yandina, Kenilworth, Peachester, I'm going to leave some out because I won't remember them all, but there's loads and loads around the region that are very important archives of our heritage. So I thank each and every person that's involved in those for helping us to collectively preserve and interpret our history, our region's history. So, councillors, I commend this report to you and congratulations to the staff in such an efficient and effective presentation of the information.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Landsberg.
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Peter, and a wonderful job that you guys do in the Heritage Department. I just wanted to bring to the attention of fellow councillors the state at the moment with the Caloundra Lighthouse. And obviously with one of our oldest structures in Caloundra, an amazing old building from 1896, and it's moved around a little bit down to Golden Beach in 1970 and then back to the original location in 1999. But as a heritage building, and obviously it doesn't meet current building standards, which is a real concern for us because we've recently just, Friends of the Lighthouse have received a letter to say that it doesn't meet safety concerns with the stairs inside that building. I know that there's works behind the scenes that we are doing to improve accessibility at other heritage listed sites, and I'd like to hope that we can sort of come to an agreement that we can still encourage tours of the old lighthouse. I mean, it's an iconic structure. It's an amazing history. It's on the front of our Levy report right there. It's an emblem for many Caloundra High School. It's in the heart of soul in Caloundra. And I know that when it was handed over from the state government for a princely sum of $1, they probably realised that, there you go, Council, that's your responsibility now. But, and I know that the lease arrangement previously was quite complicated through the state government, and that's why I asked the question about our lease policy, where does it sit in regards to museums and heritage buildings and obviously our community leases. So I'd just like to ask, and I'm sure you will, try and work towards an outcome that we would hope to see future tours take into the Lighthouse. I'll leave it at that, and I'll be supporting it anyway today, Peter. Thank you.
Did you want to comment on that, Peter?
Through you, Mr. Mead. Yes, very briefly, it is very early stages, as you are aware, of the outcome of that workplace health and safety inspection. We are looking at other precedent models for access. So yeah, very early stages. Obviously the Friends would prefer that the tours can continue. But yeah, there are some significant safety issues, particularly on the upper deck.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. And I noticed in the previous state government lease, it was quite a detailed section on risk assessment, that obviously people are taking that risk to use the facility and enjoy it. So I'd like to, hopefully we can, as council, come to an agreement and move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further speakers, I'll go back to Councillor Dabrowski to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, a couple of quick points. One a little anecdote, because I was at the Hinter Wonderland street party, which is the Beerwah street party that we kicked off when we did the placemaking project in Beerwah, and we did a major street party and it went off. Thousands of people came to that street party in the subsequent years, then COVID shut it down. We had the first one post-COVID under the branding and Chamber of Commerce Wonder Hinterland street party. Thousands, absolutely thousands came out, and we were there. And how were we there? Well, we had two ways. One, we had all of the heritage collateral, our marquee, and all of our amazingly good quality information at that event. So thank the team again for being there for a long time and doing such a good job of reminding people that we're doing a good job of managing the heritage, but they need to continue to help us. If you haven't had a look at the Discovery Guide, please do. It's a really very well thought through, and it does give credit to all of those volunteer-run facilities. And last thing, if I may, is to signal again, this council in June this year voted to extend the Heritage Levy to the Art and Heritage Levy, and I'd like to again signal that. Obviously we'll get more detail on that in next year's report, but that was a major development of the Levy program. So thank you again, councillors, for your support on that, and I commend this report to you.
Thank you, Councillor Dabrowski. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Peter, you've got 8.6 as well, the Landsborough Museum Management Report. Thank you.
Thank you. While that one's loading, there it is. So in November 2021, Council endorsed the recommendation to accept the Landsborough Museum collection and to operate the museum as a service of Council. This report responds to one of the resolutions, which was to develop 3 operational planning documents aimed to guide the preservation of the collection, which is the Preservation Needs Assessment, the maintenance and development of the museum, which is the Facility Development Asset Management Plan, and the interpretation and the enhancing the visitor experience, which is the interpretation plan. So those extracts of those 3 reports are attached to this council report. So some of the key issues that were identified. The museum has been managed by a dedicated group of volunteers on behalf of the community for nearly 50 years, and they have done a fantastic job. However, Council is looking to professionalise the museum, and these 3 planning documents have identified a range of issues. So of immediate concern is some of the issues identified in the Facility Development Asset Management Plan, which is attachment 2, and relates to significant workplace health and safety issues that have potential to impact on how the museum can operate. This is the first plan for this state heritage listed building, and the initial audit summary appears in table 3 in the report. Some of these items require immediate action, and others are a bit longer term. The Preservation Needs Assessment, which is attachment 1 to the report, identifies a series of threats to the collections, notably pests, mould, poor storage, lack of climate control, policy and procedure oversights, and the need for disaster planning and training. And the interpretation plan, which is attachment 3, provides an initial 5-year plan for a series of improvements to the exhibition and to the nature and structure of the visitor experience. So shifting away from groups of types into a thematic and a story approach. In terms of the broader precinct, there's a number of issues that will have an impact on that site. The regional collection store project will enable Council to better manage that collection. The Landsborough Placemaking Master Plan, which was endorsed in 2020 but has a stage around the Heritage Precinct in 2025, and also the rail duplication and its potential impact on the site. So within the context of those broader, bigger picture events and programs and plans, the focus in the short term is to address the priority issues, some functional improvements, and to avoid overinvestment from Council in the short term. So the recommendations there at the end is to receive and note the report, to note the request to develop a long-term strategic plan for Landsborough Museum to be included in the Arts and Heritage Levy program in the 2023-24 budget process, and note that costs associated with building safety and compliance of Landsborough Museum will be addressed in the available budget in the current financial year, through next year's budget process, and for consideration in the 10-year capital plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Councillor Babarowski, thank you. Councillor Law, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Babarowski?
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and thank you, councillors. It was very, very important once we decided to take over the operational responsibility for the Landsborough Museum that we understood in detail what we needed to do with the collections, what we needed to do with the buildings, and what we needed to do with the interpretation of those collections to create a really compelling visitor experience, and therefore grow the community's interest and visitation to this facility. This report takes us a long way in the beginning, of that journey. And I think the value of this is that it really starts to scope out exactly what we need to do in each of those three things. What's the scope and scale of the tasks with the collection? Well, now we have a good insight into that through this report, and the resources, and to some extent the sources of the resources that we'll need to do that. Same with the buildings. It shouldn't be a surprise to us that the buildings need more investment than I would like, because I'd like to have more of the money going to the interpretation and the management of the collections. But we are now, fortunately, in a good position to say we know how we can manage those buildings, both now, immediately, and once we know a little bit more about the heritage precinct overall and maybe the TMR decisions, we can start to plan to develop a really strong heritage precinct that's going to help the region understand its social history well into the future. I'm very pleased that this report genuinely and sincerely recognises the ongoing role of the Landsborough District Historical Society as in a new role, as really in the role that they, I think, should be doing, which is to help with the research, the interpretation, the guidance around that experience. They really shouldn't be in the business of trying to manage a very complex ageing facility in a highly regulated world. So I think that's going to be a fantastic journey for them. They're already on it. We're working with them now to look at the resources externally, because they are a separate entity to council, so they can access or apply for access to external grants. That will be fantastic, because that brings new money into our economy to do some of this work. So that's a great thing. And again, I just want to remind ourselves that that took a lot of courage by the Historical Society to put their hand up a couple of years ago and say, look, we're really struggling. This is a mammoth task. We know that to make this museum really relevant to not only this generation but to future generations, it's going to have to evolve really significantly. I would suggest to you that the role of museums is really not about looking backwards only. Of course it's there to help you understand your backstory and how you're interpreting that, but it really helps you to understand where you are and gives you a lot of information about what your options are going forward. So museums from this point on are going to do that more and more and more. And the only aspect I'm a little bit worried about is on our interpretation. It is fairly conventional. It's a very conventional approach to managing really what is an early settlement story. Let's let that roll for a while. Let's learn a little more. And Peter and I have lots of discussions on this because I understand that we have to work with the material we've got right now. And we're doing a good job of that very quickly. But I will be looking at and watching what our next iterations are. So I commend you on the work so far. It's been a great journey to rapidly assess what we need to do and when, but we're only at the beginning of the journey, aren't we? So thank you very much, and I commend this report and the recommendation to you.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. If there are no further speakers, do you need to say any more? Councillor, let's put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, we move to item 8.7, which is the quarterly progress report. And I invite Bill Hadrill to give us an introduction. Or is it Luke doing it? Sorry, Luke, my apologies.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. This morning we spent quite a bit of time reflecting on the last financial year. This report actually brings us into a progress report for the first quarter of the current financial year, 2022-23. The report covers the period from 1 July to 30 September 2022 and seeks to inform council and the community on the progress of the implementation of the activities, significant projects and service highlights from council's operational plan 2022-23. The report comprises of 2 appendixes. Appendix A has the Chief Executive Officer's quarterly highlights report for the period, and Appendix B has details and progress updates of each of the operational plan activities for the same quarter, as listed from our operational plan. Now I was going to invite members of our executive team to provide an update on some of the highlights, starting with the active CEO, Deborah Robinson.
Thank you, Luke, and through you, Mr Mayor, and good morning, councillors and Mr Mayor. As we reflect on the first quarter of 22-23 financial year, we can already see so many great outcomes for our region. Whether it be through the delivery of our services, our programs, or through our forward planning, Council is ensuring our community can thrive now and into the future. During this quarter, we progressed our diversity and inclusivity objectives by calling on our community to stand as one and help shine a light on racism in the region. The Shine a Light on Racism campaign encourages the community to stand up against racism in their everyday lives and pause and reflect on what it means to take personal responsibility to become anti-racist. It is important that we are respectful to others, irrespective of their backgrounds, and our message is clear: everyone is welcome here. The Horizon Festival returned with an impressive program of events between the 26th of August and the 4th of September 2022, after some challenging years of disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. This highly anticipated event was host to an exciting lineup of 440 artists and performers that included many local arts who provided fantastic entertainment in the form of music, visual art, performance, dance, spoken word, comedy and workshops. An impressive 21,492 people enjoyed the festivities either in person or through the digital channels. Personally, I was thrilled to attend the festival and witness our community members and visitors enjoying the fantastic events on offer. Major events played an important role for our community and economy on the Sunshine Coast. This quarter, there were 25 major events that attracted 86,000 people to the region and generated approximately $46.6 million of direct economic benefit. This is almost double the same time last year and equivalent to pre-pandemic times. This is an outstanding achievement for our tourism and events industries and a great outcome for all our local businesses who benefit from these major events. Engaging with our community continues to be front and centre of council business. This engagement helps inform our decision making and shaping our council projects. This quarter, we commenced engagement on the second stage of the Mooloolaba Revitalisation Foreshore project, a central meeting place precinct that is located in the Brisbane Road entry point to the Mooloolaba Esplanade. It will be a place where our community can arrive, meet, gather, celebrate and connect both with nature and each other. This multi-stage project is designed to maintain our livability credentials by increasing public open space in the beachfront parklands by 40% and create a space worthy of one of the world's best beaches. Our commitment to climate change continued through the quarter as we progressed the implementation of our organisational zero net emissions plan. Through the plan, we have continued to an integrated approach to measuring, monitoring, analysing and reporting our actions to proactively respond to our target of zero net emissions by 2041. As a council, we are continually looking at ways to improve our service delivery to ensure we provide consistent and positive customer experiences. Waste and resource management is a service we take great pride in. In quarter one alone, 3 million bins were serviced and on average collected 99% collected on schedule. The future of this service has been secured for the next 8 years with a family-owned business, JJ's Waste and Recycling, commencing Council's largest service delivery contract in July 2022. This coincided with the start of the expanded garden organics collection services with 45,000 households now recycling their garden waste across the region and contributing to reducing the amount of waste that goes to landfill. For more highlights, I will now invite our group executives to come to the microphone and speak about their respective responsibilities to progress our corporate plan goals. I would like to start with Warren Bunker, our Group Executive for Livability and Natural Assets, who will speak to the highlights achieved under our Environment and Livability Goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Welcome, Mr Bunker.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Following on from some of those points that have already been raised, our environment and livability is a significant part of what we're trying to achieve here as Council, and obviously in this first quarter it's important that we can outline some of the great things that we've achieved. In terms of, we've been planning for the Environment Livability Strategy 2017. We're actually doing our 5-year review program, and we've just started that process, and that will let us really look at how we've been achieving towards our targets towards 2041, what have we achieved to date, and should we really relook at those in light of what's occurring in our program. In terms of the climate risk management planning, we'll continue to do work in relation to this. We've prepared the Regional Climate Action Roadmap in partnership with Noosa Shire Council, and we're working both with ourselves as an organisation with our zero net emissions program, but we're also working with our community as to what that means in terms of the climate risk and how can we deal with that together going forward. We've talked this morning in relation to the Environment Levy program. We are again in the first quarter of that program, running a whole range of projects, both educational and also working with a number of key landowners in terms of securing land over the next period of time. While none have been secured this quarter, we're hopeful that we'll continue to work through that over the coming quarters. Also, the stage 2 of the Groinfield Renewal Project in Maroochydore River was completed this quarter. It's a significant project as we're moving through that area to ensure that the beach profile can be protected for the future going forward, and it's really been well seen by the various people walking along the beach, seeing how that Groinfield has actually been working as effectively as possible. You'll also see today, for the first time, you'll see that we have our rainbowing of sand occurring. Again, part of our nourishment program on the Mooloolaba, Maroochydore, Alex section to really highlight what we can achieve going forward. As also mentioned by the Acting CEO, the Gardens Organic program and the rollout of the green top bids has been a very successful exercise so far. We're working with that, and we're about to start doing a little bit more education just to make sure that that contamination in relation to those green bins can be reduced as much as possible. The Blue Heart project, which has also been mentioned quite a bit this morning, is definitely moving to its next phase and working closely with our partners, Department of Environment Science and Uni Water, and we've really kicked off in relation to the blue carbon pilot study and pilot project that's occurring, really to look at some of those carbon aspects. You'll also see that the Sunshine Coast Ecological Parklands, a significant project in our hinterland, is going through the planning stages at the moment and trying to show how that destination can be appropriate for the region going forward and complement the adjoining Mary Cancross Scenic Reserve. And you'll also notice that we've started work in relation to the material recovery facility at Nambour. This will take us to a totally different new facility in relation to our recycling and enable us to really sort some of those elements going forward and look at opportunities for actually utilising that product that is being produced. And finally, which also has been recognised in the last couple of months, our reset program in terms of a program that really can showcase how that erosion and stormwater quality can occur in real action in front of people, and showing both our builders, our developers and our community is a real significant project that is actually continuing to train numerous people on a daily basis. That's some of the highlights for the environment. There's more in the report. I'd like to pass over to Greg Laverty to talk about our resilient economy.
Thank you, Warren. Welcome, Greg.
Mr Mayor, when we talk about our goal of a resilient economy, the focus is generally on our regional economic development strategy. But during the quarter, there was a significant contribution to the performance of the regional economy from our major events strategy. So as we've heard, there were 25 major events sponsored by Council during the quarter that generated an estimated $46 million in economic benefits. The increase in the number of events can be attributed to the hard work of our Major Events Board, our Major Events Unit, as well as the region's growing reputation as a great place to host major events. There were 10 new events that Council sponsored during the quarter, and I'd just like to highlight one of them, which is the SCF Garmin Research and Fishing Competition. So the SCF stands for Sustainable Fishing, Clean Waterways and Future Generations. The event is billed as the most exciting and environmentally friendly fishing event in the country and has a strong focus on research and sustainability outcomes. So that event has provided great data to understand the health of our waterways and the marine wildlife that inhabit them. The Regional Economic Development Strategy priorities initiatives continued during the quarter. Council's work with local industries and businesses to put on a range of programs and events. That included the second annual Thriving Through Change Business Expo that saw 350 local businesses get some very practical tips, takeaways and strategies to strengthen and grow their businesses. Council was proud to sponsor the Sustainable Cities and Communities category of the 7th annual Startup and Technology Weekend, which saw more than 100 developers, designers, creatives and students attend the 54-hour boot camp. That gave me the opportunity to connect with investors, mentors, sponsors and other co-founders. The event finished with a pitch night, which was a great opportunity for those attendees to hone their pitches for their different initiatives. During the quarter, Council undertook a brand awareness survey to get an understanding of what Sunshine Coast, how it was perceived in the market as a business destination. There were 988 surveys returned from businesses from Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast. The key finding was that as a business brand, it was very closely connected to the broader destination brand, with livability being the key reason why people would invest or do business on the Sunshine Coast. Turning to our strong community goal, Mr Mayor, we saw the much anticipated return of the Horizon Festival, which had been impacted by COVID in 2020 and 2021. There was a quality lineup of 440 artists and performers across 127 events across 10 days and nights. The Horizon Festival celebrates the sensational Sunshine Coast natural landscape. It honours the stories and arts of our First Nations people. It provides a platform for local artists and also a great way to engage with our community. During the quarter, there were more than $2.7 million awarded in community grants to 343 community organisations. There will be a whole range of outcomes from those grants, and as an indication, those grant programs included arts development, community partnership, council discretionary, emergency, environment, individual, festive, recreation trails and sports field maintenance. During the quarter, we saw the second event of the First Nations Forum held at the Novotel Twin Waters. It was a great opportunity for our First Nations communities to come together and have some collaborative dialogue around wellbeing, self-determination and voice. The Youth Council continued to take a leadership role in advocating on behalf of the youth across the Sunshine Coast. The recent youth engagement activities indicated that the issue of most concern to youth on the coast was mental health. As a result, the Youth Council partnered with U-Turn and Headspace to run a youth chill-out facility at the Caloundra Music Festival, which was very well received. It was worth the wait for the long-anticipated opening or official opening of the Nambour Aquatic Centre Splash Park, which includes 2 water slides, and over the first week more than 2,000 tickets were sold to the water slides, so there's a clear indication that the community strongly supports that project. During the quarter, there were more than 208,000 visitors to our libraries, which is a 12% increase on the previous quarter. As well as the activities at the libraries, there were 38 outreach services provided by the library staff. We saw a storytelling festival where there were 600 attendees. We saw the launch of the Languages Other Than English online platform, which is a great resource for those members of our community where English is not their first language. And we saw the launch of the Kathleen MacArthur podcast series, which is a series of 22 episodes, with one being launched each week. Mr Mayor, I started talking about major events. I'll finish with just a sample of the many community events that run across our quality community venues and sporting facilities. Venue 114 hosted a breast cancer fundraiser, a burlesque cabaret performance, an In Conversation event, the Mayor's Telstra Innovation Awards, a medical graduation, a wine symposium and a symphony orchestra. The Caloundra Indoor Stadium held the National Table Tennis Championships, which needed 17,709 matches to get results, the National Under-15 Volleyball Championships, as well as the Regional Disability Expo. The Nambour Showground held the Sunshine Coast Garden Expo, the Nambour Swap Meet, as well as other events there. And finally, at the Maroochydore Multisport Complex, we saw 2 netball championships in the Vicky Wilson Cup and the Lightning Netball Cup, as well as inter-school championships for AFL and soccer. So, Mr Mayor, on that sporting note, I'll hand the baton to Scott Taylor to talk you through some more highlights.
Thank you, Greg, and welcome, Scott.
Good morning, Mr Mayor, councillors, acting CEO and colleagues. I think I've got a high standard to aspire for with Greg's presentation, but bear with me as I read through my own notes. With respect to our strong community, it's important to note that on the 3rd of August, we conducted a training exercise for the local disaster management group. This tested our disaster preparedness, response and recovery training for a fast-forming weather event of more than 100 millimetres of rain, flash flooding, hail, storm surge and severe storms including supercells and tornadoes. This training assisted the local disaster management group to prepare for the oncoming summer season and improve the processes learning from the previous disasters earlier in the year. This is so our community is best supported and protected during all aspects of disaster. I would also like to echo Councillor Law's earlier recognition of the Council's new mobility program that went live in July 2022. I think it was a great summary this morning with the presentation of the award, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you. In a collaboration between the Council, Brightwater State School and Chancellor State College, a heartwarming program was rolled out to give our children in need of access to a bike to ride to and from school. This initiative expands on the Sunshine Coast Council's existing Ride Score Active Schools program, providing disadvantaged children with a mode of transport when there is no other alternative. Schools are supplied with bicycles that are sourced from the Endeavour Foundation tip shop at selected council-based facilities. The students work with a qualified bicycle mechanic from Pedlar and Golden Beach, Caloundra, to give the bikes a fresh new lease of life. In terms of our service excellence, our goal is to commit us to consistent and accessible services, positive experience for all our customers and value to our community. Firstly, I'd like to extend my thanks to Councillors Johnson and Dixon for their continued passion and advocacy for high quality service delivery to our community. While Deborah is acting CEO today, I'm pleased to share highlights that would usually sit in her substantive portfolio. During the quarter, there were 2,433 building approvals that were issued, valuing 601 in construction. There were 88,410 customers who were assisted through our development and customer contact centres. We engaged with over 3,600 community members through the Responsible Pet Education Program and distributed 200 Responsible Pet Ownership booklets. And our customer contact channels have seen an overall increase in 7% for the quarter in comparison to the same period last year, but more importantly, 90% of our customers found contacting council was easy. We also delivered 24,000 square metres of roads valued at $2.7 million for the period. We mowed over 3,400 hectares of land across the region and maintained 1,100 hectares of gardens. We also importantly planted 379 trees and inspected 640 metres of stormwater drains. And finally, we implemented a new Park Smart hybrid vehicle that was trialled during the quarter with regulated parking areas in Caloundra, Britannia, Point Cartwright and Nicklin Way. This was equipped with a number plate recognition technology, high-speed cameras and GPS. This innovation technology is designed to increase the safety of our council employees as well as residents, support vehicle turnover in our local communities and position the region for growth, allowing more inclusivity with employment and open doors for possible commercial services. Phase 1 was successfully implemented and Phase 2 is now commencing for Nambour, Newmundi and Maroochydore. The final phase is in track to be completed by the new year. With that, I'd like to now hand over to Heidi Roberts, Group Executive for Business Approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, and welcome, Heidi.
Thank you, Scott, and through you, Mr Mayor, and through our Acting CEO, Deborah. Good morning, councillors. So as you know, our organisation aspires to be and continues to be outstanding, both externally for the community that we serve and internally for our own people. Our organisation is high performing, it's innovative and always community focused. It's marked by great teams, robust governance and strong regional leadership. Triple bottom line sustainability principles of economic, environmental and community sustainability underpin all we do, and that which combined with strong governance mean
We are an outstanding organisation serving our community with excellence. Our responsible fiscal management is represented, as mentioned before, by Council achieving its 14th consecutive year with an unmodified audit opinion. Just in terms of a comparison, Mr Mayor, you mentioned before about positioning ourselves. The most recent report tabled by the Auditor General on the conducts of audits for the 2020 to 2021 year was tabled in May of this year, and it noted that 60% of councils, so that's 45 of the 77, are still at a moderate to high risk of not being financially sustainable. So I think in terms of positioning ourselves, our responsible fiscal management is even more impressive in consideration of this data. Council continued its focus on being stronger, better and sustainable with the adoption of the $847 million budget for 22-23. The annual report provides many great highlights for the 22-23 financial year, as well as some challenges as we progress our vision and strategic goals for the future. We continue to review our long-term financial plan, which is based on sound financial modelling and includes improved asset management processes, contributed asset processes, valuation systems, and the delivery of a well-informed budget. Managing our finances well has enabled us to put in place region-shaping projects that benefit our community today and those that will call the Sunshine Coast home in the future. As mentioned previously, the Sunshine Coast Airport Expansion Project is a good example, and on 30th of June 2022, Council received $314.4 million from the Palisade Investment Partners as the final payment that extinguished all debt Council had incurred for the Sunshine Coast Airport Expansion Project. This forms part of the 99-year lease of the airport announced in 2017. Supporting our local community and businesses continues to be important to our council, and this year 71% or $300 million of council's total available purchasing spend for the year was awarded to local businesses. 5,100 plus council suppliers received payments within 7 days and as part of the shortened standard payment terms to support business cash flows and inject money into our local economy sooner. Buy local campaigns were also released, further encouraging our community to support their local businesses. Our Sunshine Coast City Hall building is truly taking shape and will soon be home to over 700 council employees, providing council with a contemporary civic and administrative presence in the region's principal activity centre. With 10 stories, sorry, that's a lot of stories, 10 stories, approximately 12,000 square metres of floor space and 156 space car parks and 96 bicycle spaces, the new City Hall will represent our people, our culture and our natural elements. The inspiration behind the Sunshine Coast City Hall's design, the hinterland's majestic glasshouse mountains, is now becoming evident as the building's exterior is unveiled. The similarities to the Glasshouse Mountains can now be seen in the architect's use of mountain forms and colours, the stepped roof and curved facade, and the tower of gradually planted native species. In parallel, work has progressed to guide the concept design for the future of the Landsborough Administration Building, and detailed design is underway for the repurposing of the Caloundra Administration Building. Together, these workplaces, along with our depots, are critical to attracting and retaining skilled staff and serving our community efficiently and effectively well into the future. Our organisation is high-performing, we're innovative and community-focused, and safety and keeping our community and employees safe is critical to achieving our vision and strategic objectives. Council's commitment to wellbeing, health and safety has positively influenced our lost time injury frequency rate, in which we've seen a 23% decrease this quarter. Our diversity and inclusion program has continued with key deliverables, including the development of a prevention of workplace bullying and harassment procedure and a sexual harassment and response procedure, as well as an Everyday Respect campaign, which also launched a diversity and inclusion advisory group. As we've mentioned before, and as we're seeing in the media, as mentioned by Councillor Natoli, cybersecurity threats have increased in our community. Council is working hard to keep our information safe and yet still accessible by our community. We've been continuing to bolster our cybersecurity program and improve cyber maturity levels against the Australian Government's Essential 8. There were 1,482 impersonation attempts this quarter and 398 malicious attacks on council email systems, all of which were successfully blocked. Council's security partner undertook controlled multi-phase scanning against council's environment and found no evidence of unauthorised access to our systems. We undertook independent penetration testing on all corporate applications and have identified and closed off on all identified vulnerabilities. We continue to proactively patch systems against known vulnerabilities and threats and are strategically partnering with the state government's cyber security unit to share and learn from each other's security experience. All of the above initiatives and the updates provided by my colleagues and the leadership of our portfolio councillors, Councillor Hungerford and Councillor Natoli, showcase the ways in which we continue to be high-performing, innovative and sustainable in all that we do, both internally and externally for our community. We're a council defined by great people, strong governance and regional leadership, with the vision and determination to be a truly outstanding organisation.
Thank you, Heidi, very much. Can I have someone to move the report, please? Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Johnston, seconded. Would you like to open, Councillor?
Through you, Mr Mayor. After all the GEs, what have I got left? So much there. So just briefly what stands out for me, the highlights for the quarter. Over 2.7 million to 343 applicants in our community, helping our community groups. In environment and livability, our Net Zero Emissions Plan 22 was implemented in July 2022, so this is to continue our leadership and commitment and our contribution globally to the Global Emissions Reduction Challenge. It's a continuing effort for us. And our resilient economy, 72% of our total purchasing spend going to local businesses, supporting our community in these times. That results in 82.4 million being injected into our local economy. Service excellence, 7.2 million invested to rehabilitate and resurface 3.9 kilometres of our roads. That's 23,859 square metres, and this is just for the quarter, notwithstanding the wet weather we've had, so that's a very good outcome. And our outstanding organisation. Now, Council was named finalists in 2 categories of the 2022 National Economic Development Awards for Excellence. Economic Development Strategic Thinking and Economic Development Marketing and Promotion. Very excellent to get nominated for those awards. I look forward to us being successful there too. But with that, Mr Mayor, another outstanding quarter, and it shows our commitment to delivering, notwithstanding the headwinds we have in front of us and the financial things with a high CPI inflation rate running at the moment, and we're there for our community all the way through. I put this to you, another outstanding report, and councillors, we can be proud of it, the whole organisation we can be proud of for achieving this, and our community can have confidence in us.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Babarowski.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, very briefly, I just wanted to amplify Mr Levy talked about the Horizon Festival. Look, councillors, that was an incredibly important re-emergence of the Horizon Festival. Just imagine if you were part of the arts community and COVID had essentially robbed you of all of your income for 2 years. As a region, we are incredibly and understandably proud of our natural environment. We didn't put it there. What we do put there is what we do as a human community. And our arts and creative community is a very important part of that. But if they literally fail to make a living, they can't be there. So 440 artists were engaged in that program in the Horizon Festival. I'm very thankful for this council and the community for the support of the Horizon Festival, and remind yourselves of how important the Horizon Festival will be as a mechanism to develop the skills, the experience and the talent base that we will need in 2032, as I hope we, with the highest aspiration, showcase ourselves to the world. And we will need to get significantly more complex, more sophisticated than we probably are right now. And the Horizon Festival is a major mechanism to do that. So thank you for pointing that out. And as the arts portfolio, I feel obliged to just remind ourselves just how important that investment in the Horizon Festival is and will be.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Law, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I might just to follow on from the comments about the Horizon Festival and also other festivals and the support of the arts that the council has. We also heard through the reports about the major events programming that we operate on the coast. And I just want us to, on the back of this report, remind ourselves that major events tend to have a bit of a leaning towards major sporting events because that's where the big money is. It brings in a huge number of people to the coast who contribute a large amount to that $46 million of economic benefit that we have received as a result of supporting and sponsoring major events. But I want to remind us, if we think about Horizon Festival, we think about Caloundra Music Festival. The Caloundra Music Festival had a huge focus this year on local Sunshine Coast talent, and it also had a focus on Australian-based talent. We know the reasons for that, but we showcased and we focused on local talent. Really, really important, and another means that council can fund and support our artistic community. But we also have the opportunity to better fund our artistic community by recognising that major events have a huge contribution financially, culturally, emotionally, socially, and bring our whole community together. So when we consider the funding of major events, please can we remember that the arts are major events and they require major support, because it's harder to get sponsorship and TV coverage for arts events than it is for a relevant and similar sport. So please, let's remember that we must continue to support the arts in every opportunity that we have. Thank you, and I will be supporting the report today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Natoli.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to agree with Councillor Law. In regards to funding for events, the arts, cultural events, always seem to be at the bottom end of the money tree. No matter how significant they are, compared to the amount of money that we allocate for their events, compared to large sporting events, is quite a big disparity. Sculpture on Edge starts in Plaxton Garden up on the hinterland this weekend. It is our biggest sculpture art event. Over 10,000 people over 10 days will attend that, and I've committed to going to all of their, and I'm sure Councillor Babarowski has as well. I would hope that we will help promote that through our Facebook pages. But I know the struggles that the committee, Arts Connect, has undertaken, just getting volunteers, just being able to meet the increasing costs of putting these events on. Just like us, our building costs are going through the roof and our budgets are being smashed. They're in exactly the same position, yet they have so limited funds to be able to undertake these events. I would hope that we can find a mechanism of being able to grow these events with an encouraging stepped-up funding model that can enable them to be sustainable. Paying a full-time or part-time curator of those events is really important. To be done by a volunteer and knowing, especially Gretchen, having had a baby recently, 6 weeks ago, suffering mastitis, trying to do this with a newborn child and trying to run this event, it's an incredible challenge for a volunteer, 100% volunteer. So my encouragement to council is let's get behind them and totally support the comments Councillor Law made.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. If there are no further speakers, I'll go back to Councillor.
Question?
Yes.
Sorry, very quick question maybe to Voluntary. Could we clarify, have we participated in supporting events such as the Sculpture on the Edge as a sponsor? Are you aware of that?
It was fun.
Well, I can confirm we are the sponsor of it, so certainly take your point. Can we do more? Probably. But I think given its relative new position, the programming...
Councillor, I think you're answering your own question.
Thanks.
So no further speakers. I'll go back to Councillor Hungerford. No need to close. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks very much, Luke, and to all our ELT members. Moving on to 8.8, which is the October 2022 Financial Performance Report. Thank you, Isaac.
Good morning, Mr Mayor, councillors. Council, we continue our strong operating result with a $67 million operating result. It's payable to budget by $4 million. It's made up of revenue above budget of $4.5 million and expenses also above budget, $434,000. In terms of revenues, our holiday parks continue their high trend with revenue over the expected budget for October 2022, and return on investments are increasing due to the change in interest rate markets. In terms of expenditure, we are seeing unbudgeted operational costs come through for the flooding that was incurred in February and April earlier this year. Our capital works program is 22.6% complete, just $65.6 million expended. Our core program sits at 22.2%. Our cash for the end of October is $365 million, and our debt remains unchanged at $472 million. Our proposed borrowings still sit at $34.2 million for this current financial year. In terms of our investment performance, we have 16 term deposits at $160 million. They mature between 30 and 180 days, with about 7 coming to maturity before Christmas. And the weighted average interest is 3.42% on those. And Council, the recommendation is to receive and note the report titled October 2022 Financial Performance Report.
Someone to move? Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Cox, thank you. I'll just alert councillors that Councillor Dixon has left us. So we'll go to Councillor Hungerford to open. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Another excellent result. Isaac's gone through most of those, but I'll just re-emphasise some of them again. Council has a positive operating result, as stated before, $67 million, which is $4 million above the current budget. As of October 2022, $233 million operating revenue has been achieved. That's $4.5 million more than the current budget. As of the 31st of October, $166 million has been expended, resulting in a variance of $430,000, 0.3% higher than budget. And as was explained before, that's materials and services are above budget due to $787,000 unbudgeted expenditure, and that's the rain events we had, February and April. As of October 2022, $65.6 million or 22% of Council's $295.5 million capital works program has been financially expended. This year I'm hoping we get good weather and we get through to getting like 90-95% done this year, but we're on track. The core capital program has progressed 22.6% of budget. That's an actual spend of $49 million. That's going into our community and supporting our businesses. Corporate major projects have progressed 22.8%. And the Council's cash, as was stated before, $365 million, and our debt is $472 million. Very healthy result. Shows our focus on financial management each month. Like I was saying before, and these other clowns say that we're in bad shape, it just really is laughable. You don't know whether to laugh or cry at those sort of statements. This is excellent. We're going into the year well, and I'm hoping we do not have as many carryovers this financial year as we did last year, but only time will tell, and we're all dependent on the weather with that one. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. If there are no further speakers, you don't need to close, Council. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks very much, Isaac. Councillors, we move now to item 8.9, the Caloundra Aerodrome Master Plan. Councillor O'Prey.
Yes, Mr Mayor, through you.
Mr Mayor, I have... is that on? One, two, three, we're good to go? 1, 2, 3. Oh, so sorry, okay. Mr Mayor, I, Councillor Jason O'Cray, notify that I may have a declarable conflict of interest in item 8.9.
It's all right, I think we can hear you.
Musical chairs, there we go. I'll start again. I, Councillor Jason O'Cray, notify that I may have a declarable conflict of interest in item 8.9 of the Caloundra Aerodrome Master Plan to be considered at the ordinary meeting on 17 January 22, on the basis that I have a long-standing association with Surf Lifesaving Sunshine Coast, Surf Lifesaving Queensland and Surf Lifesaving Australia and Surf Lifesaving clubs across the Sunshine Coast, which is in this relationship which may ordinarily constitute a declarable conflict of interest, as one of the leasees is Westpac Helicopter, which is under the lease of Surf Lifesaving Queensland. Now, Mr Mayor, in consideration of my declarable conflict of interest, I am of the opinion that I can participate in the discussion and vote on the matter, and in doing so, my participation will not lead to a decision that is contrary to the public interest. Further, I acknowledge the eligible councillors must be resolution, decide my participation or otherwise in making the decision in this matter. Mr Mayor, I'm happy to take any questions if required.
Thank you. I will start with just advising councillors in accordance with section 155 ES brackets 3 brackets B brackets I of the Local Government Act. I now call on the councillor to move that Councillor O'Prey either stay or leave the chamber for the duration of discussion and decision on this matter. Councillors, should the majority decide it's in the public interest for the councillor to stay in the meeting for the duration of this matter, reasons for the decision will need to be recorded in the minutes. So, is someone prepared to move? Councillor Hungerford?
I'll move that Councillor O'Cray stay in the meeting. Okay. And I believe that the declarable interest is so far removed that that doesn't affect his ability to make an impartial decision. That's number 4, yeah.
Item 4. Happy to second that. Councillor? I think we'll put that. Councillor Suarez.
Ask a question, Mr. Mayor. Jason, I agree that the association does appear to be far removed. Just a question, have you had any discussions regarding the master plan with any of those associated entities, either being Surf Lifesaving Australia or Westpac Rescue Helicopter?
No, not at all.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll press ahead and I'll invite Brad Poole. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Matheson, to introduce. I would, just before you start, I would make the point that there is confidential elements to this report, and should we need to examine those, that may require us going into a confidential session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Mayor, good morning. Good afternoon, councillors. The report available for your consideration today is the proposed Caloundra Aerodrome Master Plan. And in a moment, I'm going to ask Brad Poole to come up to the lectern and take you through the report. Just before we did so, however, I just wanted to set a little bit of context for you around the master plan per se, and indeed master planning generally. And in that context, I wanted to touch on really two particular contextual matters. And firstly, that is, what does a master plan do? What is a master plan? What does it do? And secondly, and importantly, particularly in the context of the considerations that are before you today, and that is, what does a master plan not do, or indeed what it cannot do? So, if I can deal with the first of those, and that is essentially what does a master plan do? And if you look at it in the context of Caloundra Aerodrome Master Plan, what the master plan does is it provides a policy context and intent for the retention and future use of the site. It is a policy document per se. It is not a statutory instrument, and I'll come back to that in a moment. If it is approved, what it will provide, particularly in this case, is greater certainty to the community, to existing lessees and to potential new entrants into the aerodrome in relation to the continued availability and commitment to investment in the intended use and operation of the site. So that's effectively what the master plan does. It signals intent in relation to the future availability and future public investment in the Caloundra Aerodrome site. The flip side of that is what can't a master plan do, and indeed what does this master plan not do? And there are some quite specific things here that I just want to make sure that is put up front and well understood from the outset. And much of this also goes to the heart of the comment I made a moment ago about the fact that the master plan is not a statutory document. So specifically, the master plan cannot grant, amend or revoke leases on the aerodrome site. Secondly, it cannot amend or revoke existing use rights. Thirdly, it cannot and does not provide a different development assessment regime to that which exists in the Sunshine Coast Planning Scheme, and I'll touch on that a little bit more in a moment. Fourthly, it does not provide a mechanism for assessing and granting development applications, granting development approvals in the Caloundra Aerodrome site. And fifthly, nor does the master plan provide a planning instrument that replaces the purpose and intent of the planning scheme. As I mentioned a moment ago, any development proposal that must be assessed in relation to the Caloundra Aerodrome must be assessed under the requirements of the planning scheme. As I've said a couple of times now, it's not a statutory instrument, but if it's adopted by Council today, I just want this to be very clear, because I think in some of the discourse that's occurred recently this may not be clear. The master plan can be amended in the future if circumstances change, or if Council decides, for whatever reason it may do so, to amend its planning scheme insofar as those amendments relate to the Caloundra Aerodrome. So should Council decide to do that and then proceed to initiate and go down the path of an amendment to the planning scheme, and that amendment relates to the Caloundra Aerodrome, and that amendment has a bearing on what's contained in the master plan, Council can come back and revisit and amend the master plan at that time. So I just wanted to provide just some of those contextual comments initially before Brad gets into outlining the intent of the report before you today. I note the Mayor mentioned earlier on that there is a confidential attachment to the report. I also would just like to emphasise that as well, that if there is a need to discuss the elements of the capital investment plan, which is the subject of the confidential attachment, and or indeed any matters relating to commercial business investment intentions of other parties to which we do not have consent to disclose publicly, those matters would need to be dealt with in confidential sessions. So I just remind councillors of those obligations. The final point I will just make, and while I've had great privilege since June to have I guess executive stewardship of this process, I really do want to acknowledge, and there's been a lot of people involved in this process, but I really do want to acknowledge and thank Kim Martins and Brad Poole for their outstanding efforts and their commitment and work in terms of progressing the proposed master plan to this point today. Unfortunately, Kim can't be with us today. I know she'll kill me for telling you this, but she's having a special birthday today, and she was forbidden to come to work for that reason. But she asked me to pass on her regrets that she can't be here. And I'd also want to acknowledge Brad and his efforts right from day one with this process, the intensity and commitment and passion he's applied to working on and delivering this master plan, and also finding time, as councillors, some of you would be aware, during the course of doing so, to also become a father. So I just wanted to acknowledge Brad's efforts in that regard. On that note, I'll pass over to Brad and allow him to continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Matheson. Welcome, Brad. The floor is yours.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors. Thank you, Craig. In May 2021, Council appointed SMEC as the lead consultant to develop a new master plan for Caloundra Aerodrome. Since adoption of the current master plan in 2013, a number of changes have occurred which have affected the operations and strategic positioning of the aerodrome, and those changes include, but are not limited to, operational site management transferring from Sunshine Coast Airport to Council's in-house property management branch, Council purchasing the site in freehold from the state government, significant growth ambitions and expansion plans from existing lessees, development of plans for mass transit and proposals for a heavy rail solution which align next to the aerodrome site, land use challenges impacting Queensland Air Museum, the revised designation of surrounding ecological values as matters of state environmental significance and koala habitat, and growth in urban development, particularly to the south of the site. As a result, a new master plan is required. The development of the master plan has been delivered in 2 stages. Stage 1, a strategic assessment, essentially a facts gathering exercise, and Stage 2, development of the master plan proper. A project steering committee comprising officers and councillors was established at the outset. An objective of the proposed master plan is to establish a clear value proposition for the Caloundra Aerodrome as a key aviation and aerospace industry asset within southeast Queensland, and one which has the capacity to support more advanced technology solutions and supply chain requirements for this sector, without necessarily expanding the scope of aircraft movement at the site. One of the key strategic directions of the master plan is that it seeks to ensure no material degradation of the current impacts associated with flying operations. To that end, the master plan is about improving the value proposition without intensifying the movements. The approach of establishing the aerodrome as a key aviation and aerospace asset is considered to be one that will afford the Caloundra Aerodrome a distinct locational advantage within southeast Queensland, and improve the scale of economic benefit delivered by the precinct to the Sunshine Coast over a 20-year timeframe. This is consistent with Sunshine Coast Council's Regional Economic Development Strategy, the REDS. Since 2013, the REDS has provided a vision and a blueprint for the Sunshine Coast economy, a prosperous, high-value economy of choice for business, investment and employment, while offering an enviable lifestyle and environment. More specifically, the aviation and aerospace industry is one of 7 high-value industries that form the foundation of the REDS, and hence define its ability to deliver a more diverse, adaptable and robust economy for the region. Given the fundamental dependency of the aviation and aerospace industry upon specific infrastructure assets, the attainment of such outcomes is naturally dependent upon just 2 distinct and complementary precincts within the Sunshine Coast: the Sunshine Coast Airport and Caloundra Aerodrome. Although the Sunshine Coast Airport represents the most intense and significant investment in infrastructure aligned with its role and function, Caloundra Aerodrome is a key complementary asset with the potential to play a key role in the local evolution of the sector as articulated under the proposed master plan. Some of the key outcomes of the proposed master plan are: it seeks to attract industries that have a minimal impact on surrounding sensitive receptors, recommends a user-pays charging scheme is implemented for landing and parking, with emphasis on regional-based users being prioritised, removes Isabel Jordan Reserve as an area of aerodrome expansion, recommends greater investment in aviation infrastructure and parking facilities at the aerodrome, commits to continued data collation for future assessment of ongoing management of flight movements, and does not suggest any revision to current flight paths, and no recommendation to install additional runways or modify existing runway dimensions. One of the key requirements of the project was to establish a clear vision for the aerodrome to provide direction and guidance for its future growth. The vision for Caloundra Aerodrome is: Caloundra Aerodrome will become a precinct of choice for advanced aerospace and associated manufacturing activities, delivering cutting-edge, sophisticated and sustainable opportunities of significance to the southeast Queensland aviation and aerospace industry. This recognises that the importance of the Caloundra Aerodrome in a wider economic and employment context is best maximised by pursuing a distinct proposition that embeds its value not just to the Sunshine Coast but to the broader southeast Queensland aviation and aerospace industry. High-value industries such as aviation and aerospace have the potential to generate a range of enduring career opportunities and higher-paying jobs for the local community. Many participants in this industry are also regarded as clever, innovation-oriented businesses which attract a workforce with high levels of knowledge and skills and generate unique intellectual property with significant commercial value. With this in mind, the proposed master plan recognises that a facility such as the Caloundra Aerodrome offers substantial potential to pivot from a general aviation facility into an aerospace innovation hub, as it has the potential to support complementary development of other high-value industries, being a traditional aviation facility with the ability to incorporate education, research and development, tourism and clean technologies through future expansion. The master plan proposes a two-stage approach that seeks to sustainably support economic investment in the aerodrome. Stage 1 of the master plan focuses on rationalising the landside and airside optimisation opportunities in the existing Pathfinder Drive precinct to facilitate potential growth and diversification of a broad range of aviation-related business investment. Stage 2 identifies a future investigation precinct. Stage 1 includes the extension of Pathfinder Drive and associated services, the release of approximately 6.3 hectares of proposed developable area, which can be made available through flexible lot sizes, and improvements to airside infrastructure, including taxiway and apron parking. This land release seeks to support and facilitate the growth aspirations of the existing aviation, associated manufacturing and technology-dependent industries, plus tourism-related businesses, as well as accommodate the attraction of new cutting-edge aerospace industries and services to the aerodrome. Caloundra Aerodrome airside infrastructure is currently considered at capacity for storage in both sealed aprons and hangars. Existing leaseholders have advised that unless additional leasable areas are made available, the growth of operations is limited, and some have noted they will need to look to relocate elsewhere. The additional airside infrastructure aims to improve the capacity for aircraft storage and promote efficiencies in runway usage by reducing bottlenecking at the runways, thus reducing the need for aircraft to complete additional flight circuits while waiting for runway availability. The proposed plan also includes the provision of 3 new helicopter parking bays and a new higher capacity helipad that could accommodate larger helicopters. The final location of this helipad facility still needs to be determined. It also includes an additional bus set-down and car parking spaces along Pathfinder Drive, and notes that when appropriate, investigation is required into the functionality of the public amenities and site office if the existing car park site is to be redeveloped. As mentioned previously, the plan does not suggest any revision to current flight paths. There is also no recommendation to install additional runways or modify existing runway dimensions. Unlike Sunshine Coast Airport, Calandra's short runways and limited taxi network will continue to limit its market to light aircraft, primarily used for general aviation, rather than regular passenger travel like Sunshine Coast Airport. The master plan also identifies a future opportunity at the eastern boundary of the site, associated in part with the delivery of the proposed heavy rail station within the adjoining rail corridor. This is referred to as Stage 2 and is shown in grey to the right of the screen. While there is no certainty as to the timing of delivery by the Queensland Government for the rail solution, the master plan recommends further investigations are undertaken to consider the opportunities and constraints of utilising land in this area. An eastern interface between the Caloundra Aerodrome and a proposed major transport hub may provide a significant opportunity for the future economic sustainability of the aerodrome. Essentially, Stage 2 leverages off the proposed future B2M corridor to create a precinct that connects public transport with the aerodrome. The plan has been developed in consultation with existing aerodrome tenants, community-based associations and aviation and industry businesses. These groups each offered a unique perspective into how they wanted the future of the Caloundra Aerodrome to be shaped, and identified several matters for consideration within the master plan. Due to the limited nature of the associated impacts on the surrounding community, owing to the fact that no changes are proposed to the existing flight paths, obstacle limitation surface or aircraft noise exposure forecast, Council progressed with targeted stakeholder consultation rather than broader community consultation for the development of the new master plan. Targeted stakeholders include current aerodrome tenants, surrounding resident associations, Caloundra Chamber of Commerce, Wildlife Preservation Society, Sunshine Coast Airport, and Department of Transport and Main Roads. Engagement has occurred in the form of one-on-one interviews, updates at the quarterly Caloundra Community and Aviation Forum, in-person presentations, written submissions and telephone interviews. Where appropriate, the feedback received has been incorporated into the master plan. AEC Group, a sub-consultant for the master plan project, assessed that the Caloundra Aerodrome currently contributes $64.6 million in output for local business and $37 million in gross regional product, with 502 full-time equivalent jobs. In comparison, when Stage 1 is completed and tenanted, the Aerodrome is projected to increase its potential contribution to the Sunshine Coast economy to $178 million in output for local business, $75 million in gross regional product, and over 1,100 FTE jobs. There is strong interest from existing businesses at the Aerodrome to expand at the site. However, at the present time, under the current configuration, the Aerodrome is at capacity with no land readily available for lease. The master plan, supported by an infrastructure investment plan, identifies new areas that could be delivered to secure private sector investment and business growth in the Aerodrome. The total capital costs estimated to deliver Stage 1 of the master plan is $15.8 million. A significant portion of that estimate relates to contingency and escalations, representing the current volatility of costs within civil construction services. This capital investment can, however, be broken into staged packages of works spread over a number of years. An investment plan is attached as a confidential attachment. Endorsement of the master plan today is not a commitment to allocate funding. The investment plan will need to be referred to the next budget development process. We are seeking endorsement of the Caloundra Aerodrome Master Plan 2042 and referral of the Infrastructure Investment Plan for consideration in the next budget development process. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Someone to move the report? Councillor Babarowski. Seconder, Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Babarowski?
Councillors, I'm sure that you're aware that the Caloundra Aerodrome is recognised as being a seriously important asset for us all as a region, but it's always had a degree of tension with the community that literally live around it and therefore have a tremendous and understandable concern about its impacts. So this master plan really is a very good way of managing those tensions and making sure that we recognise the future direction. I would suggest to you that the main aim of this master plan is to paint a picture of the way forward. And it essentially says that we're going to pivot from a predominance of general aviation, GA, pushing lots of flights up into the air, to a new and exciting balance between GA and clean tech, high tech aviation sector industries on the land around the airport itself or the airstrips itself. And that's one that the community understands and will support, because essentially if we endorse this master plan today, the community can be assured that we'll manage the impacts going forward in a way that makes sure that the air traffic is an important consideration of everything that happens from this point on. And in fact, it says that it will essentially look for a material non-worsening. That's a really ambitious thing to do. But it also gives tremendous certainty to those already at the aerodrome or would like to be at the aerodrome as to what direction are we going in. And I think we have a number of current tenants and stakeholders that are seriously committed to investing if they understand that this aerodrome has certainty going forward. If we endorse this master plan today, I believe that does that. However, having said that, I'd like to stress the points made in the presentation that should we, through a review process or any other new information that comes to us, need to make adjustments to that master plan, that we have the ability to do that. And as the divisional councillor, I would certainly be one of the first to put my hand up to support a review or a further report to council to look at how we might integrate, for instance, a review on the PAS, for example. So I'm confident that this mechanism has enough certainty, but with enough flexibility to respond to any significant or material changes we need to take into account, and quickly, or as quickly as our processes always allow. Councillors, I really think that the community will be very pleased with this, as should be the majority of tenants. Is it perfect? I don't think you can get perfect when there are existing tensions like this. but I do sincerely think that it is a very good mechanism for us to go forward with. So I ask for your support. I would make a final note that one of the tensions in the previous master plan was that we had a section of the Isabel Jordan Bushland Reserve that was designated as an expansion area for QEM, that's the Queensland Air Museum. This resolves that tension by essentially saying we're not going to go there. That will be to the tremendous relief of the community that have been arguing to fully retain the Bushland Reserve intact. So again, I think we've removed one other tension as well. This potentially removed one tension should you endorse this master plan, and I would encourage you to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Landsborough.
Thank you. Sorry, excuse me. Through the chair. Yeah, look, I'd like to obviously support the officer's recommendation today with the master plan. I know there's been many workshops on this and a lot of information that's been shared with fellow councillors. We see it as a strategic part of the future of Caloundra, a hugely important part of having aviation and aerospace to drive our local economy. Obviously, it is one of our RED's high-valued industries on the coast, and I'd like to just make sure that we as councillors support not only existing tenancies out there, but future investment into this region. I'm confident in the investment plan that's been put up, and I'd like to obviously look at that's future work that we'll be looking for budget support as well, moving into that for future works along Pathfinder Drive. There's just a couple of things, Brad, I'd just like to comment on is during the consultation process, there was recommendations to look at fixed-based operators to take on that. I know we've gone down that route with Sunshine Coast Airport, but I feel in the future that may be an area that we could look at the Caloundra Aerodrome. There's no suggestion to look at flight paths and look a review of that. I know the complaints or the issues that we've received recently have been quite low, but that's probably recognising the actual current use of the aerodrome as well. The issues that obviously are a major concern for existing tenancies are obviously what is allowable and accessible development within their current lease holding areas as well. And I'd like to obviously make sure and just pass that on, that the confidence that we have in this master plan moving forward, that we can review outcomes of the PSA in the current planning scheme. And I'm sure that with Divisional Councillor Rick Babarowski here and myself, and we'll work hard towards achieving outcomes that will provide surety and confidence in our tenants and existing investment in the Caloundra Aerodrome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsborough. Any further speakers? Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I rise to obviously support the officer recommendation as well. Councillors Babarowski, Landsborough and myself sit on the Aviation Forum for Caloundra, so I feel that the others have spoken, so I'll throw my support in the ring as well. The master plan clearly has the intent to focus on this facility being a key aviation and aerospace asset. And as Councillor Landsborough has already touched on, it does align with our regional economic development strategy. So I just want people to sort of keep that in their focus. Now, some of the key points for myself in support of this particular master plan compared to the previous one was the fact that it did remove Isabel Jordan Reserve. I think that is a big win for the community, especially the local environment there. It focuses on significant investment in the airside and landside opportunities. So that's predominantly through that stage one that we saw in the earlier map. Obviously, there's been discussion about introduction of a user pay system, and I understand that there's strong support from the existing people, lessees and tenants for that. I know that there's been a little bit of discussion around obviously the PSA. Clearly, I think it's responsible of council to keep that in until that review has been done, and any modification to that can be done through that process in the leading up to the new planning scheme. I do believe that we need to endorse this today because any delay could potentially risk that investment program being delayed through the budget process. I think there is a sense of urgency. We do need to get on and deliver the investment for this facility. So I would not like to see this not supported today and potentially delayed by months, because that could risk that whole budgetary process and the future investment into the facility. I tend to agree with what Councillor Landsborough said at the end there, that if this is endorsed, we do need to look at future management models. I don't believe Council has the expertise to really get the best out of this facility. We've done it with the Sunshine Coast Airport. We've got the Palisade Investment Group have been providing the expertise. And I do think that we need to investigate the various different models for management at the Caloundra Aerodrome. So whether that be an aero club managed model like Caboolture, or a hybrid model with council as Gympie, I do believe that is a key for the success of this master plan. So we need to endorse this, but I strongly believe that we need to review and investigate those management models moving forward. And lastly, I do want to acknowledge yourself, Brad and Kim, for the work that's gone into it. I know Mr Matheson has also played a big role. And actually, I just wanted to commend Craig, wherever he's gone. The contextual slide you put up there at the start to lay out what a master plan can and can't do, I think has certainly helped with the debate today. So I appreciate you doing that. And I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor O'Prey.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you. I too would like to say a lot along the lines of what Councillor Cox has just said. In particular, I'll start by thanking staff. I know that Craig Matheson spent a lot of time and effort and energy on this, including his weekends and outside of our work, so thank you very much, Craig. The communications that I've received have been exceptional. I've had a lot of emails, I've had a lot of questions, and there's a lot of concurrency here with economic development and what we can achieve through our gross domestic product of the Sunshine Coast local government area through the Caloundra Aerodrome. And there's a lot of connection, and I have got a couple of questions, if I could, Mr Mayor, through you, to economic developments. I'm not sure if Andy or Greg would like to come on board here, but I just really would like to start by a very basic, simple question. Is the master plan the tool that's going to take us into the future for expansion of leases and the opportunities for businesses that are already out there and future businesses that want to go out there? Are they in a situation now with the master plan in this development, if it's approved today, that we can use it, and as the acting CEO has said on many occasions, sweating the asset? Are we going to get the most out of the Caloundra Aerodrome with this master plan? I'll start with that.
Through the Mayor, Councillor, it's an excellent question. As you know, the Council has a range of levers at its disposal in terms of how it actually optimises the use of an asset like the Caloundra Aerodrome, and how it looks to both incentivise and support investment in the aerodrome by other parties. The master plan, as I said, provides a policy intent and gives that certainty around the availability, the continuing availability of the aerodrome, and an indication of where those expansion areas are planned to be. What comes next from this, and it is always a continual process, is looking at things like the timing and programming of your capital investment, the sequencing of those leasable areas, how they're made available and how they're put to market to lease, how we support existing leaseholders, importantly, which is, and I think all councillors have highlighted previously with me in some form or another, and the importance around the interests of the existing leaseholders. So how we support and enable the existing lessees to achieve their business objectives. And so forth. And again, there are a range of tools which we have at our disposal there through things like our leasing policy, through our incentive scheme, through our relationships with state and federal government and so forth, where there may be a capacity to access other streams of funding and so forth. And indeed also through our planning tools and development assessment tools, some of which we've highlighted today. So I think it's always important to consider those things in a sequential context. Master plan is the first stage because it provides the policy intent and the certainty around the continuity of the availability of the asset. We now look to move into a phase whereby we look at what are some of these other levers we need to pull and when in order to support and incentivise that growth, expansion and investment in the aerodrome. Does that assist with your question?
Yes, it does. And it's ticking a lot of boxes, as you do. Thank you, Craig. Mr Mayor, another question, if I may. The PSA, which has been touched on by other councillors already today, I wasn't really that keen to bring it forward here today and make much of draw much of attention to it, but I'd just like to know the difference between where we are at right now and where we might be in, let's say, 6 months' time, when we've had a bit of time to go through and have a look at what the review has said and what the differences that might be in place for land holdings in the Caloundra Aerodrome and future tenancies.
Right. So through the mayor. So in the context of the public safety area, and as you know, there are 4 elements to the public safety area. It's there's four different elements. We've undertaken, it's reflected in the report, that we will commission an independent review of the scale, intent and purpose of the public safety area, and that is occurring now. We're in the process of finalising the engagement of the consultant to do that, and we've set a time frame of end of December for that review to be completed, and that's being done, and rightly so, within the context of the work that is occurring currently in relation to the development of the new planning scheme, because it is the planning scheme, the existing planning scheme, which put the public safety area in place. That's the tool through which that is managed, and through which development within that public safety area is managed. So it's appropriate that that review is done within the context of the development of the new planning scheme. The outcomes of that review, and I don't know what the outcomes of that review are, and I wouldn't even begin to speculate what they might be. The outcomes of that review will come back to the organisation, and then will be the product of a series of recommendations to council. In a very, very simple form, and I'm conscious I'm being overly simplistic here, but conceivably that review might suggest that there is no change required to the elements of the public safety area, and that is appropriate as it's currently depicted. It might come back and say there are some modifications that should be considered to the 4 elements of the public safety area, and for these reasons. And part of that review is also the consultant is required to do a risk assessment to inform their recommendations. Or the third option, conceivably, could be that they come back and say there is no need for a public safety area for a whole range of reasons, and we've done the risk assessment that supports that recommendation. Whatever the recommendations are, they will come back to you to consider. And then you, as a council, will make a decision on whether to accept in part, or not accept those recommendations. Should you accept or accept in part those recommendations, and those recommendations involve either removal or some modification of the public safety area, that will then be dealt with through the development of the new planning scheme. I think, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but Mr Patey has previously advised councillors that should a decision be made by council at some point post-December, assuming we receive the consultant's report in December. That's December this year. Sorry, I should have clarified, not December next year, December this year. So December 2022. Should Council decide to progress with an amendment to the planning scheme, that amendment needs to be substantially progressed, I think were the words Mr Payne used, and I think it's the words which we've used in the additional information that was circulated to councillors, for that amendment to be considered in the context of any potential development applications that relate to land within the public safety area. I think you've all got a copy of some of the advice that's been provided previously in relation to what the planning scheme currently says is in terms of permissible development within the public safety area. So at the present point in time, any development that is proposed within the public safety area that is consistent with what is permissible within the context of the planning scheme can come forward and be assessed under the planning scheme. But as you know from the advice that's been circulated, at the current time, under the current provisions in the planning scheme, there are some significant limitations in place in relation to what can be developed or can be delivered through in terms of new or intensified development within the public safety area.
Thank you. I'll just finish up now for the Mr Mayor and I'll speak to it. Look, I think we all know and understand that the aviation is a big part of our Sunshine Coast economy. It's one of our 7 high-value industries. It's been right through the Reds for many, many years, which we've all been a big part of. I have to concur with what Councillor Cox said earlier about the future of the management of the site. Council does a really good job of finding the right people to do the right job all the time, and great examples of that is the Sunshine Coast Airport, Palisades, and we've got walkers now in the CBD, and I'm sure there'll be other ones in the future. I reckon this will be right at the top of the heap to look at that in the future. Again, I'd just like to thank the staff. I know there's been an enormous amount of time and effort put into this, and the amount of emails and the information that I've received has been extraordinary on this item. And with that, I'd also like to say I know that Kim Martins is watching, so happy birthday to Kim, and thank you very much for that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Prey. If there are no further speakers, I'm going to go back to Councillor Babarowski to close.
Thank you very much, and thank you, councillors, for your contributions. I think one of the things that the contributions reveal is that this has been a long and complex journey, and it is difficult to resolve a number of the tensions when you have an aerodrome surrounded by intense and intensifying residential areas. So we've always recognised that. But as the divisional councillor, I can assure you that I am more than confident that this, and I liked the phrase optimising this asset on behalf of the community, rather than maximising it for any one particular group. It's a really good optimisation model. And in that light, I'd like to really again recognise the tremendous work of the team to produce this master plan. That was a very challenging and very detailed report. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for retaining the complexity. This is not easy to understand, but I think it does come across as providing the right degree of certainty at that high strategic level. We are pivoting from predominant GA to GA and high-value aviation sector industries on the ground. That will provide tremendous high-value jobs, as already demonstrated by some of the investments already there. And if I may, I'd like to acknowledge Will Shrapnel from Helimods, who's been, look, if there was an endurance award that I could award you, I'd give it to you. You've been here since 9 o'clock, so well done. But again, it just reminds us that we have an exciting way forward. It really genuinely is. So, councillors, I hope this gives you the confidence to endorse this very important master plan, but still recognise it does develop as we have new information or more inputs. We will respond to that as necessary. I endorse the recommendations and commend the recommendations to you and look for your support.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Rightio. Councillor Babarowski, Councillor Landsborough, Councillor Cox, Councillor Natoli, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Hungerford, Councillor Suarez, Councillor Law, Councillor Jamieson. For. Those against? Councillor O'Prey. The motion's carried. Okay, thanks Brad and team. We're going to move on to 8.10, which is the disposal lease to the Department of Communities, Housing and Digital Economy. I just draw your attention again that there are confidential elements attached to this report, and they need to be observed and avoid any public discussion in the best interests of the community. Okay, Lee.
Thank you. This report has been submitted to seek an exception for council in line with the Local Government Regulation 2012. The exception seeks to enter into a direct lease of residential property in Maroochydore to the Department of Communities, Housing and Digital Economy. The residential dwelling subject of this item is identified within the confidential attachment. Council would typically transition a property like this to its residential property management agent. However, entering into a lease with the Department of Communities represents an opportunity for Council to contribute towards the provision of emergency crisis accommodation and social housing purposes operated by the state government. The property will be leased at or above market value to the Department of Communities, so there is no adverse impact to Council financially. As the Department of Communities is a state government organisation, Council is required to grant an exception under the Local Government Regulations to allow Council to progress with the lease. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Someone happy to move the report? Councillor Law, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Natoli, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Law?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've heard a number of times already today about a housing crisis. We've got an example here of council using its assets to provide support and assistance to the State Department in their bid and the work they're doing to address the housing crisis. As we heard earlier, it has nothing to do with granting more land into the urban footprint for developable land. The crisis is today. The crisis has been emerging over the last 24 months and was probably arguably there prior to that even. So I am delighted to speak in support of this recommendation. I would have one question which I would just like to ask, that any renovation work or adaptation work would be paid for by the State Department?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. The Department of Communities will be taking any renovations work to make them acceptable for residential occupancy.
That's excellent, thank you. And just to clarify for real certainty, they will be paying a full commercial lease for the property?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, Department of Communities will pay at or above commercial rent, and that will be determined by a valuer.
Excellent, thank you. So, having gone through the report, reflecting on the many conversations we've had in this chamber about what can we do to help the housing crisis, I look for and urge your support on this resolution today, on this recommendation today, so that we can do a small piece in making a difference for our community. So I commend this report to you, and I hope that we have full support. It might give us a suggestion for where else and how else might we be able to help in this current situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lee, thank you for the report. Also like to congratulate the officers for bringing this recommendation forward. And I just have one procedural question in relation to the process. What is the term of the lease, and how much notice do we have to give to terminate the lease at any time should we decide to do the works that are necessary?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Generally, our commercial leases provide a redevelopment clause, so they can terminate with 3 months' notice, which usually provides the tenants with sufficient notice to look at relocation. With a term of the lease, it's something we'll have in discussion with the Department of Housing, but it would have to be at least 1 year to accommodate those residential tenancy agreements.
That's all I did for the company. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further speakers, just before I go back to Councillor Law to close, I just wanted to recognise Wendy Gleeson, who did a lot of work on this particular project and has been outstanding in getting this outcome. So well done to you and to your support team. Councillor Law, would you like to close? Not necessary. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Councillors, I'm in your hands. We can either break now for lunch, or we can wrap up what is one more item and two petitions. Let's wrap it up. Okay. 8.11, Resilient Home Funds. Welcome, Nick.
Good afternoon, Mr Mayor, Acting CEO and Councillors. Item 8.11 seeks Council's approval to authorise the CEO to enter into contracts to purchase properties under the Voluntary Home Buyback Program. The acquisition of these properties is funded by the Resilient Homes Fund, which is administered by the Queensland Reconstruction Authority, known as the QRA, who have advised Council that these properties are eligible to purchase under the program. Queensland has recently experienced extraordinary levels of rainfall and flooding, and to help people living in Queensland quickly recover and become more resilient to future flooding, the Australian and Queensland governments have introduced a $741 million Resilient Homes Fund under the Disaster Recovery Funding Arrangements. The program is the largest of its kind ever to be delivered in Australia, and the intent of this fund is to help Queenslanders across 39 local government areas whose homes were impacted by the 2021-2022 floods. Funding is available to assist eligible homeowners to repair in order to enhance resilience, retrofit or raise flood-affected homes, and in some cases to buy back homes. There is $350 million specifically available for the voluntary purchase of flood-impacted homes, which is referred to as the Voluntary Home Buyback Program. The Resilient Homes Fund is a 2-year program, and homes may be purchased at any point during that time. Although the funding is available from the Resilient Homes Fund, Council is the purchaser of these properties under the program and will become the registered owner of the land. The first step in the process under the program is for homeowners to register their interest. Buybacks will be considered on a case-by-case basis and are voluntary. The intent of these acquisitions is to mitigate risk to life and property in areas that are susceptible to flooding and severe flooding and frequent flooding, There is a limited amount of funding under the program, so funding will be prioritised based on the frequency of flooding, the severity of the flooding, the structural safety of the property, future flood risk, broader social impacts, and where it is deemed that repair, retrofitting or raising is not suitable to address the flood risk. The Voluntary Home Buyback Program will cover costs for homeowners and councils, including independent market valuations of the property, costs associated with the sale of the properties, including legal expenses relating to conveyancing, costs for the demolition of the dwelling, costs for land rehabilitation, and the rezoning of each property to ensure ongoing non-habitable uses. The QRA have commenced contacting homeowners to confirm their interest in the program, and to date 4 properties within the Sunshine Coast Council local government area have been identified as eligible under the Voluntary Home Buyback Program. These properties are referred to as Tranche 1, and the details of these properties are included in the confidential attachment of the report. The QRA are in the process of obtaining market valuations for each property and are intending to make formal written offers to the homeowners to purchase these properties as soon as possible. Once a written offer from the QRA is accepted by a homeowner, conveyancers engaged by the QRA will draft contracts which will then be reviewed by Council's Legal Services team prior to the execution. Settlement of these properties is subject to vacant possession and will also be funded through the program. Following the acquisition of a property under the program, Council is required to secure the property, arrange for the buildings on the property to be demolished, the land cleared and rehabilitation undertaken. These costs are also recoverable through the Resilient Homes Fund, including the costs of engaging a project manager to undertake the work if required. Should council wish to repurpose the land for an acceptable non-habitable use, for example, a public park, then these costs associated with delivering the repurposed site would need to be borne by council. Council will also be required to rezone the land for non-habitable uses in accordance with council's obligations under the Resilient Home Fund's criteria. Council will be required to submit monthly reports to the QRA on the progress of site rehabilitation and costs spent to date. Item 8.11 seeks a council resolution to authorise the CEO to enter into contracts to purchase properties approved by the QRA for the Voluntary Home Buyback Program, subject to council entering into a funding agreement with the QRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Councillor Maria, thank you. Second, Councillor Johnston, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, I wasn't actually intending to move this item, but I'm happy to do so. Just wanted to reiterate that the homes that are attached to this report have all volunteered themselves to the Queensland buyback scheme due to recent flooding. So it's not something that's being forced upon them, it's where people have entered into it voluntarily. I'm very pleased to see that we have a number in our area which have been approved for purchase, and I request the support of my fellow councillors in moving this item forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Landsborough.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question, Nick, just to understand the process of the buyback scheme. I noticed obviously the other homes listed, but are we looking at working in with Unity Water, with nominated properties that could be within our urban areas that have been impacted by stormwater and sewage inundation? Is that part of that resilient buyback as well?
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Landsborough, just so I understand, you're talking about properties that are flooded as a result of drainage or stormwater overflow?
Correct, yeah.
So the buyback program is only for 4 major flooding events that have occurred in the past, and one of them being Cyclone Seth, another being both major flooding events this year as well, and there's a 4th category as well.
Okay, Scott, did you want to just add something to that?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't realise you were in the room. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Mayor, this relates to some new homes that have come to the attention of the council. The homeowner actually makes the application. The application goes to the QRA. The QRA will come to council to look at the flood reporting that we have on board, and then through that analysis we can either support the QRA's consideration of the home or not. So we are doing that work in consultation with Unity Water, and the ones that I think you're thinking about are in that process, so they're making the application. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Good to hear that's carrying on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further speakers. Go back to close. No need to close. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Move to, there's no notice of motions. Must be a record. Thank you. Go to item 10, which are petitions. The first one, 10.1, Councillor Landsborough, promote road safety in Burke Street at Golden Beach.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And this is a petition with 51 signatures on behalf of Margaret Anderson at 1 Wentworth Parade, Golden Beach. And we, the undersigned, request your support in presenting to Council our petition for, at the very minimum, 2 more 50k signs to be placed in Burke Street between Westminster Avenue and Kennedy Parade, Golden Beach. Clearly, as Burke Street is being used more and more, the number of drivers speeding is also increasing, and consequently the risk of the safety of residents and road users is becoming very high indeed. More and more large trucks, for example, are using the road, while young children walk along Burke Street to attend Golden Beach Primary School each day. So I'd like to hand this to the acting CEO.
No. Okay, so moved by Councillor Landsborough. Someone to second, please. Councillor Johnston, thank you. All those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously, thank you. Go to 10.2, Councillor Natoli, traffic concerns Dalby Street, Maroochydore.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a petition of 36 pages, 501 petition from the lead petitioner, Stuart Cram. And it reads, we the undersigned respectfully petition the Sunshine Coast Council to 1. Reverse the decision to redirect the route 619 bus along Dalby Street, Maroochydore, decision which was made without adequate consultation with local residents. 2, reverse the decision to impose yellow no parking lines, which would drastically reduce the availability of and access to street parking on what is already a congested road. 3, reconsider the inconsiderate, untransparent and last-minute approach to informing local residents of such a significant change to their mobility, accessibility and to their everyday life. And 4, return the route 619 bus to its existing line along Bungarma Street, a route which is perfectly functional, better positioned for public transport users and which has already been optimised for bus transit.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli.
Can I just speak?
1 minute. Yep.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to thank our CEO, Emma Thomas, in last minute being able to convince TransLink to undertake public consultation. I had no idea, neither did the state member or the residents know that this bus route was going to go through a new directed route. I would not even sign off putting my councillor comments on the project used because I didn't support the fact that we weren't consulting with these residents. I want to thank Scott Taylor. The other night I went to one of the consultations and that was just fantastic. Just the empathy and the way that Scott handled that, I just want to commend him, the staff that were there that night. The residents felt like they were listened and democracy was at play. So thank you very much for allowing the residents to have their say. This is what our mantra in terms of a council and being able to consult with our community in the right way that we should do it. And I know that Scott apologised to the residents for not doing that, but I think it's important that we learn these lessons as we go on.
Thank you. Someone to second. Councillor O'Prey, thank you. All those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, that concludes this November ordinary meeting. Thank you very much for your input and to staff.